Welcome to the Transform with Vance podcast, where transformations begin every day, and I am your host, Vance Hines. So let's get started. Hi, this is Vance Hines, and I'm here with the one and only Caitlin K. Caitlin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I can't complain. I made it through another week, so that's good.
Hey, there you go. That's all you can do.
Yeah. So, tell me, where do you live? Where are you from?
I currently live in New London, Connecticut. Originally from Rhode Island,
Ah, do you
so
know
just
Jen?
generally the New England area.
Do you know Jennifer Jolliker?
I do know of her. I haven't met her yet. But yeah, I'm familiar with her and her company. Because very famous in Rhode Island with all the, especially with the charity work she's done, and so very, very well known. In the area.
Ah, very nice. She's the only Rhode Islander that I know, so that's my
Yeah.
only reference.
We're a really small state, so you tend to like, oh, if you don't know somebody, you know somebody who knows somebody. It's
Yeah.
very, very close relation because it's such a small area.
Hey, now, do you see you're in Connecticut? Where in Connecticut are you?
So Connecticut's like a rectangle, and it's like the bottom right corner, like on the opposite side, like the east coast of the Connecticut. So about 2.5 hours from New York City,
And so what's the name of your town again?
New London.
New London.
Yeah.
Oh, so when they landed here, they named it New London.
I mean, that's like New England, New London.
Yeah, that's right. I've never thought about New England, so that's
Yeah.
right. New England, you live in New London, New England.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. What I've done with everyone else is kind of give them just a general snowball question up front. Kind of describe why you are considered a DDP yoga success story.
I think for my story particularly, I think when Dallas and I were really talking about it, he really liked the fact that, I kept persevering. And so, I mean, part of it was, when I heard about the 2019 Positively Unstoppable Challenge, I chose to do that for myself, and I wanted to make a change in my life. This is an opportunity for me to compete against myself, and lost about 30 pounds at the time. Didn't win, which was fine for me because that's not what I was really in it for. But I wanted to double down on that. So when the 2020 came up, I did it again, which he really liked. That like I kept trying, because just because you don't win something doesn't mean you didn't win at your own life. I had already gotten 30 pounds down, and I was still in that forward momentum that I wanted to continue. And then the other part of it, I think, was the social media aspect that I brought in. I post on my Instagram and in the DDP Yoga Facebook group every single day. Whether I'm having a good day or a bad day or somewhere in between, I'm always really using that as an accountability measure for myself. That those posts originally were just for myself. I go, if one person sees these or 100 people, like cool, but I really wanted to do it to really make sure that I keep going. And so I think that really over time it became important for me to show people my vulnerability, show people that it's not all sunshine and rainbows in this journey. There's times where you have really tough times, and then there's times where you have really awesome success. And I think that where people have connected with that and people have communicated on my post is, seeing those times where you can be vulnerable and seeing that there are those journeys, throughout, and it's a never ending journey that you're going to keep going over time and time again.
Awesome, awesome. And you were a 2020 Positively Unstoppable Challenge champion.
Yeah,
Is that
which
correct?
was a very exciting. Yeah, it was. Yeah, me and the Unstoppable Four. Yeah, so I was very excited to get the call in fall of 2020. At that point, I had lost. Well, for that challenge particularly, I lost about 75 pounds in 6 months. I had like I said, I really, for the 2020 challenge, I wanted to keep going, but I wanted to push myself harder and I wanted to find ways to challenge myself more. So, read Dallas's book and, really knew that I needed to find a way to go beyond what I was already doing. Like I had hit the mat and I started with, I think I started with beginner. I was messing around with the chair workouts a little bit, but I had just, was coming off of my diagnosis of my autoimmune joint disorders, so I was trying to figure out what worked for me and what I could comfortably do. But then over the course of 2020, I worked my way up through, all of the levels on the app, so beginner, intermediate, and finally to advanced. And when I finally got there, for me, it's like a what's next. And so I always wanted to run. So I added running into my life. I've always enjoyed it when I tried it, but it never did a really good job of it because I was at the time I had too much weight on my body. It was hurting me to run it. When I first started, it was 30 seconds maybe. I tried to run, like I couldn't run. And I say that to people all the time because I worked up over time to a half marathon, but when I started, I couldn't run 30 seconds. I couldn't catch my breath. My joints were killing me, and so combining with the running and the DDP and a huge change in my diet and eating over time, I was able to successfully, at the a time, I think I was about 100 pounds down when I won the challenge. So it was super exciting.
Awesome, awesome. How much are you down now?
About 110, 115. I think by the end, if once I hit my final goal, which is like another 10 pounds, it'll be 125 lost.
That is awesome, and you've kept it off now for going on 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for me, the hardest part is the maintenance. Like you really when you're in the middle of it losing it, you're like, this is
Hmm.
definitely the hardest part because you think like once you cross the finish line, you're like, things will get easier. But I feel like the mental game of shifting towards maintenance of like making sure that you maintain is by far the hardest because you have to change everything about mentally who you are. You don't see yourself the same. I still see myself as that person that weighed 299 pounds a lot of the time. I still mentally I have to check myself for limitations that I don't have, but I still assume that I have. And with food, I mean, I have a binge eating disorder, and so food's always going to be the enemy for me in some way. Like it's always going to be that thing that's whispering in your ear. It's always going to be that thing that's challenging for me to overcome. So I think over time, the maintenance has become, I had several skin removal surgeries last summer, and I had a touch-up surgery for that a few weeks back, and so that stopped me entirely, because you're recovering and you're on bed rest. And from there, I had to restart again. I was back to doing some beginner workouts. I started with bed flex and then went up to chair force and then, worked my way up. And now I'm finally running again almost a year later, which is really exciting, but a really hard challenge because again, the scale is scary. You don't, you get these adjustments, whether it's am I gaining muscle? Am I gaining weight? And am I measuring inches? And all these things. So it's a huge mental hurdle to continue to maintain, but it's something that like I never want to go back there. And I think that's the part where like I consistently remind myself of how I felt about myself and what I valued to keep pushing myself to maintain over time.
Well, you threw out a tremendous amount of stuff there. I'm gonna have to pick apart each one. But first, let me let me get some background. You said you grew up in Connecticut. How old are you?
I had to think about that. I'm 32 years old.
32.
Yeah.
What do you do for a living? What do you do?
So I work in higher education. So currently I run the residence halls at Connecticut College. I serve as an on-call administrator, so anytime there's emergencies on the campus. And I just kind of, and I also work in conduct, which means I hold students accountable. So all kind of juggling all those roles in one job. It's
Oh
never dull.
man. So you're the Punisher when they come see you. Then you're the yeah. They hate to see you coming. Then, huh?
I mean, I hope not, but yes, sometimes it's they get that email from me and they got to meet with me and have a meeting and they know what that means. But usually it's not too bad. You build a rapport with the students and they're good kids and over time it's one of those you're not a bad kid, you just made a bad decision. And so having those conversations with them.
Yeah, well, shit, I don't know. I never did like any of my conversations in college I had like that. I seemed like always getting in trouble some means or manner. Uh,
There's always a few of them.
well, the first time I went to college, college wasn't my main focus by any um, stretch of the imagination. I mean, classes were an inconvenience, I think, having to attend classes. I ended up flunking out. I had a 167 GPA after 2 years. So my first run at college didn't amount to much, but I sure had a good time though.
We definitely have those students every year. Like that is not out of the norm. There's always a handful that just sometimes college isn't for you, and sometimes that you just need a few years to, like I said, you need to marinate a little bit, and then once you've marinated, then you're ready.
That's right. My dad put me on the docks. He said, if you ain't going to college, he had a friend in the trucking,
Hmm.
transportation business. He put me on the docks, and I ended up losing two toes on the docks, and so that made
Wow.
me really, when I went back to college, I really wanted to do good. That gave me some pretty good incentive to go back to college and work hard.
Oh yeah, that'll set you straight real quick.
But I can tell you though, back then, workers' comp paid well. Shit, my tow money got me a new truck and a boat and a trip to Alaska. So shit, I'd give them some
Wow.
more. If they paid like they did back here in the 80s. You know.
Yeah. Wow. That's
But
awesome.
yeah, but anyway, the so you oversee the halls. How did you get that job? That seems like an interesting job to have, to be overseeing
Yeah.
the residence halls and being the Punisher. You need to get you some
I mean,
Punisher
it's
shirts.
I know it's one of those jobs where like so for the residence hall part of it, it's like nobody ever like starts their like their college experience and education going, I'm gonna work in higher education. There's no
Uh,
like bachelor's in higher education.
yeah.
Um and so it's one of those jobs that you kind of learn while you're here. So I became a resident assistant or an RA when I was in my undergrad, and really loved like the community aspect of it. I liked the sense of creating a home for students because a lot of these students travel across the country or across the world to come here, and a lot of them have a space where they feel like they don't belong or they don't know where to belong, and so this job helps provide that. Like the nicer part of my job is I work with my RAs and they create fun events and programs, and it's developed so much over the years. Like it's not just they do absolutely do pizza parties and movie nights, but then there's other times where they have like really great discussion groups and stuff. They'll have like book groups and discussion groups where they get to have times where like they can connect on things that mean something to them. And so like that's the really fulfilling part of being in residence life, of like trying to create community in a place where some students have never been away from home. They've
Mm-hmm.
never lived on their own. And so giving them that kind of buffer zone. And I think that's the other part of my job when doing conduct is like, it's not quite what it used to be in the sense of like punishment, but now it's a lot more having that conversation with students of, okay, you went out on your own and you had those moments where you made a decision, and like this is what the decision had an impact on. Particularly think about like students who drunk drive, right? Like obviously that's something we never want to see. So let's have a conversation about like you could have gotten hurt or somebody else could have gotten hurt. And so instead of just saying, "Oh, here this is how you got in trouble," and instead we're now having the conversation of, how do we make a better decision next time, like calling you an Uber or whatever, to get the students to think a different way. So it's not as a fun part of my job, but it's something that's like can be really fulfilling is because it still contributes to them having a home and community on campus.
So let's see. Said you were what, 32, 33? What did you say?
Yeah, I'll be 33 this
Be
year. Yeah.
33. And you went to the University of Connecticut. You went to the same college you're working for now?
No, I work at Connecticut College. I went to Rhode Island College for my undergrad, and then I went to Walden University for my master's, and I graduated with my doctorate this year in January.
Oh wow! Congratulations. So
Thanks.
did you have to do what do they call it? A dissertation, a doctoral
I did.
dissertation? What did you do
I
yours
all
on?
yeah.
What did you do yours on?
Um, s- so this is my focus was so it was a higher education
Hmm.
doctorate.
Well, I
And
need to be
so my
calling you
focus.
Doctor K.
I mean, technically, yes, that's the
Yeah.
title. It's weird, like if you're not like a medical doctor, I'm always like, yeah, it's a yeah. But it also my dad was a corpsman in the Navy, so he's
Yeah.
Doc. So for me to be called Dr. K is like weird because my dad was always the doc. But yeah, it was long. I mean, it was a dissertation, and so we focused. My focus was on LGBTQIA students in higher education and like the
Oh.
support that they need, because there's a lot of discriminatory practices or and a lot of policy support that they're needing changes in. So I did a work with a lot of those kids here on campus, and then 170 something pages later, I have a degree.
Oh wow! Congratulations. Every
Yeah.
time you speak, I have more questions. That, that we're never going to get anywhere, Doctor K. We're never going to get anywhere. So, the okay. So, can you say what all the letters are that
Yeah.
are in that right now, and what they
Yeah.
stand for?
So yep. So LGBTQIA is lesbian, bisexual, LGBT. I had to like think about it. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, uh, queer, intersex, and asexual.
Well,
And then you could have a lot of people add a plus because there's more.
yeah. And I mean, I was looking at the more on Dukes, and it's like there's two Q's, one for questioning and
Mhm.
one for queer. Which
Yep.
in my day, queer was not a good term,
Yeah.
to use. But now it's accepted
Yeah.
as
It's kind of been taken back. Like they
yeah,
took it back as like a good word for the community. Yeah.
yeah. And so my age, when someone says queer, they still they're still
Mhm.
kind of. But then it goes in, and there's like a two S, which is a two spirit,
Mhm.
and there's like a shit. I can't remember them all, but it goes on and on. and
Mhm.
and I
Oh
can
yeah.
and I can tell you why I'm so interested is that my oldest daughter is she graduated from the University of Texas, and she was an anthropology major with I think she has a minor in gender studies, but she's a
Mhm.
lesbian. But she's gotten a job with the caucus down in Austin. Her and her girlfriend live in Austin, but she works for the Gay and Lesbian Caucus, or the I'm not sure if I'm getting the name right, but the caucus of politicians in Texas, and so she's involved in their social media page. She's involved in writing press releases for them, and I mean just all and so she's very inactive, and so. Every time I spend time with her now, I get educated on all of the issues going on, and so it's kind of crazy, but well, I'm glad that you did that, that you, and especially in that area, in that arena,
Yeah.
to help that, it's time that the world changed, so
Yeah, I definitely think that it's when you start to look at your thesis to argue about what's needed for you have to show that there's a gap in the education, that you need to fill a gap. That's what your research is for, and it's so proved like that this is a space where there's not enough research. There's a lot of states where there's not enough support, and so that's what a lot of my research was adding the adding a voice to that of where there is needs. Texas is a great example of there's absolutely a lot of legislature that needs to be worked through and a lot of things that need to be changed to support people better. And so I really applaud your daughter for the work that she's doing.
yeah, she's well the latest. Well, Texas is the big urban cities are Democratic and liberal, everything else is ultra conservative Trumpers type. And
Mhm.
but I forgot where I was going. I know, but there was recently a an AG decision that talks about, first they passed some kind of law, but now they can go after parents who criminally who provide, um, I know I'm going to get the term wrong, but the transgender therapy, or
Mhm.
I don't know. I know I'm getting the words wrong, but they criminalize. They provided an avenue to to charge parents of criminal acts if they go out and get medical treatment for their adolescent kids, or under
Yeah.
18-year-old kids. And the AG wrote a pro opinion of that legislation, and so my daughter was all bent up in arms about that. So it's crazy. They're fighting an uphill battle here in Texas.
Yeah, she doing hard work. I really applaud it. It's
Yeah,
no joke. Like we come a lot way in a lot of states, but definitely there's more work to be done.
yeah, Texas and Florida, and it seems like there's a bunch of other ones.
Oh
But
yeah.
all right, so well, tell me this. A couple of questions I have. Like, tell me what she introduces herself as, her pronouns as she and they.
Mhm.
So tell me what a they pronoun means for an individual. Is that something that
And
you can?
yeah.
I didn't have the heart to ask her. I didn't want to hurt her feelings.
Yeah, I think it's person to person about what it means to them. So when I introduce myself and people, if someone asks my pronouns, I also say she, her, they, them.
Yeah.
For me, personally, it means that um, I subscribe to, I was born, female, I'm cisgendered female, but I also what it means for me to say they them is that I don't always subscribe to like the gender rules. I don't think those have to be as rigid as they once were. So if someone wants to refer to me as they them, cool. For some other people that might mean that, they don't fit they don't always feel like they are she doesn't always feel like she's she or they. She doesn't feel feminine. She might not feel identifying with that. And so they them offers a space where there's a lot more of an amorphous area, like a gray space, where
Yeah.
you can kind of test out how you're feeling about different things. But like I said, that's very person to person about what that means to them. So what it means to me doesn't mean the same thing to the next person.
And now, when you say that you were born cisgender, that means a
Hmm.
female. That means that
Hmm.
you were born identifying as female, and
Yep.
that you are attracted sexually to men.
No, so cisgender talks about what it means. It means that you were born the biological. I was born a biological female, so I was born with
Okay.
like all the female parts. Like so that's like so when when someone says they're transgender, that means that they might be a different gender than they were assigned at birth.
Okay.
Cisgender means that I am the gender that I was assigned at birth. I am biologically female. So that has
Uh,
specifically to do with your gender.
so doesn't have anything to do with sexual preferences, I think.
Nope.
See, I misunderstood that then. Okay. All right. All right. So now, and tell me how big the University of Connecticut is.
So that's actually a different school. We get this a lot. So
I know.
UConn, the
It's
massive
you.
state
Oh,
institution.
yeah,
Yeah,
Connecticut
I'm
College.
yeah, yep. So we're actually we're a lot smaller because we're not a state institution.
Yeah.
So there's about 1,600 students at this college, where there's like tens of thousands at UConn. But yeah, no, Connecticut College is a lot smaller, private liberal arts school.
Well, that's kind of what I placed when I went to Austin College here in Texas. But we had about 12 to 1,300 students total. Now, tell me how has this generations of students changed from the generation of students that you went to school with?
I think that particularly with COVID, there's been massive changes.
Yeah.
Um, so I graduated my undergrad in 2012, so it's been 10 years, right? In
Mm-hmm.
10 years, even pre-COVID, 10 years is like there was a huge shift in higher ed because the millennials finished and we have the start of this Gen Z generation. They're very different from
Mm-hmm.
my generation to the next. Um, I think particularly communication is different. They're very digitally focused, they're less in person. But then when COVID hit, they got so used to, being away from everyone that we're coming out of this and they have no sense of how to communicate or a desire to go out and communicate in person. If you think about a freshman coming into college this next year in the fall, has not had a normal year since their sophomore year of high school. And that's a huge developmental gap for them because that's the big years, right? That you learn how to like have a high school experience and you interact with people and you learn how to have social cues and norms and all of those things. And they didn't have a lot of that. Um, so what we're seeing from students is first a huge shift in like how they're interacting with people, but also at the same time like how they want to have their education, how they want to, interact. I mean, I would say like activism's huge for this generation. They absolutely want to be involved. They want to have a voice. I think that's been really important for a lot of students is, whatever side you stand on for any issue, they want to be able to voice that. I've noticed that a lot more. I think they, in a healthy way, challenge a lot of, things. They question more, but I also think that at the same time, I think there's a misunderstanding where people think they're just pushing back just to push back. But I think so many of them do it for their education. That's one of the wonderful things I see about this generation is they're so incredibly passionate about learning, and not just in like their degree, but anything. They want to know more about like the world and why things work and how things work, that they're constantly asking those questions, which I think has been so cool to see that evolution over time.
Well, I mean that's what Socrates got killed for was get teaching the youth to question everything. So I think
Mhm.
that's awesome. But um, in this time and age, when facts are fluid, there is no what we can't even agree on what a fact is in this time and
Yeah.
age, and so how do they decide what to what education they go, who they're going to listen to, what do they follow, what are they looking into? I mean, are they coming up on each side how they were raised, or I mean, how do you teach them to look for what I think is the facts?
Yeah, I think there's so much more independent of like I think for my generation and the ones before us, we very much were like what you were raised as is what you learned, right? And for a lot of us like that, for mine and all the previous generations, you kind of stuck within what you were raised in and what you learned and you stayed in that community. You saw some of that shift I think in my generation of millennials, like we started to push away from that a little bit more. We stepped out of we retained what our parents taught us and we have our parents' beliefs, but then we started to shift away from that a little bit and we checked out other things. But I think this generation particularly is just they want to create it from their own. And I think that they do not trust media, and because you talk about facts and they've seen it over them, their time growing up is that like you said, what's a fact and like how do we prove things? And so I think that's why they question so much because they're so used to having things be so fluid that they have to constantly find different sources. They're very open to learning more about things because they need to kind of make their own decisions about what they want to rely on, for to learn something because that is hard. There's so many times where they hear something in a classroom and, where are they getting that information? Is that, factual? How do I look at a resource? And so that's a lot of what our students are questioning is the actual facts themselves.
Well, I think that's a good thing. I'm not so sure that's a bad thing for this generation. That makes me feel better about them.
Yeah, I think they got a lot of positive things coming up. I'm pretty excited for them.
Well, the COVID sure changed their lives. No proms, no.
Oh
They
yeah.
didn't do anything that we've all taken for granted over our whole lifetimes.
Mhm. Yeah, we have a big music festival on the campus every year, and it was almost like a rite of passage to get to go to this music festival because it's a big deal every year, and we haven't had it I think in 3 years. And so this it's coming up this May, and our seniors were the only ones that have been to it. It's almost like this mythical thing. And it's a pretty simple music festival. It's like, people playing on stage for a few hours and everyone it's a good time outdoor event. But something as simple as like a music festival on campus is a huge deal to them now because they've missed so many of those life moments of like college traditions, right? Like you have certain college every college has their own set of traditions, and there's so many things that we haven't got to have that some of these traditions I think are going to get lost, but other ones they're I think now overindulging, right? They haven't got to, have a house party or, responsibility and learning like even something like learning how to drink. Like college students are going to drink, but and then you have those times where maybe you drink too much and you learn what's too much for you. Now these students are going, instead of like gradually learning something like that to responsibly drink or responsibly do this, they're going, 0 to 11 because they have no sense of, time where they could go do that. And now that they have access to do these things, they're just going, way bigger than they should be. And so that's a lot of what we're working with is trying to get them to almost adjust back to, where things are at, what is expected. They're learning a lot, but very delayed. So that'll be really interesting to see how that kind of pans out later on.
Yeah. Has um, I mean, traditionally there's been certain job paths that everybody kind of takes. Accountant, lawyer, medical has their belief in what's the proper way to make a living. I mean, a lot of people now are saying don't go to college because of the debt, and I mean, has their um, belief in the world of what's the best way to get ahead in the world, has that changed?
Oh, absolutely. It was actually, I looked this up last night because I was talking to my brother about it, was that so for millennial generation and older, the average amount of times a person would change their career is 2.5, on average. But for the Gen Z population, on average, they will change their career path 5.5 times in their life, on
Yeah.
average. And so they are doubling my generation and older's like career path. They're trying all different things. I think that they are looking to see, is college right for me or not. I think there's going to be a lot more people in the workforce, looking at technical jobs or, alternative jobs, just finding different ways to make a living, and so I had a very traditional path of like I went to college, I got a degree, I got a job in the field, I got more degrees in that field, and my plan is to stay in this field. That's very traditional. My brother, who's only a few years behind me, he's still like on the end of the millennial generation, but like he's had multiple careers and he's done very well for himself. But he's changed a few times. He's 30 this year, but he's changed his job a few times, and to no detriment. But he just tried this and didn't like it and went somewhere else. And I think that's what a lot of them are doing is that they have this flexibility, and particularly when COVID came, like everything shut down anyway, so a lot of them had the time to sit there and go, okay, do I really like what I'm doing? Or am I going to continue doing something else, and not pay for a fortune? Because, like, it is. I joke, but I have student debt to the level that I call it monopoly money, and that's not worth it for everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's at some point
Hmm.
that money is just crazy. And so it's like, yeah, I'd rather go and do some technical job or something that's not going to end up in, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
It's crazy.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, I want to back you up just to kind of. It's what I normally do, but you've raised so many questions for me. If I don't ask you the question, I'll forget it. So if I'm jumping around, I apologize. But
No
if I
worries.
think of something, I gotta ask you. Shit, I'm old. But all right, I with everybody else, I kind of worked them through their childhood to find out, what how they just to get an idea what they were like growing up, where did they have any issues growing up, just to kind of get a feel to how you got to where you are today. I just kind of work you back through your past some. So you said you were born, spent a lot of your life in Rhode Island, I guess, and
Yeah, I was a Navy brat. My father was in the Navy for
ah,
35 years, so I moved a lot, but Rhode Island's where I majority spent my life growing up.
and where did you go to high school at?
Westerly High School, so in Westerly, Rhode Island, which is like right a coastal town right on the beach.
Oh man, that's nice, huh?
Yeah, it's a beautiful town.
And did your dad discourage you from going in the Navy?
I think my dad knew that the Navy couldn't handle me.
It's good. That's good. How many brothers and sisters? That kind of thing.
I have one younger brother, Sean. He's 2.5 years younger than me.
And so you said he's changed fields. What's he doing now?
He works in sales for I think a German or European company. It's one of those ones where you just say he's in sales because you're like, what do you do? And then he explains it to you, and you're like, uh-huh.
Now the and so you see when let's see I think you said your weight had gotten up to 299, and were you is that something that you struggled with as a child, or was that something that came later in life, or kind of tell us how you got to where you are physically? I mean, did you do
Yeah,
sports and that kind of thing?
yeah, sure. So I think several things run in tandem with this in my journey of, so I was always really thin as a kid. I didn't really put weight on until I would say end of middle school. So right up until then, like I was like rail thin. My metabolism was on point. I just like I always and my mom is a phenomenal person of like she always made us sure like she had a hot breakfast and a hot dinner for us like every night. That woman just busted her butt. But she always made sure meals were really healthy, like making sure like for example at dinner there was always like you had the protein and you had your vegetable and your glass of milk or whatever. And so she just always really made sure we ate really healthy. Um, but I know that like I remember as young as like I remember in first grade like like I have memories of like overindulging in like a food item. And then unsurprisingly, like when I hit puberty and you start your teens and hormones come in, like I started wanting more food. And so there'd be times where I would eat too much. But again, my metabolism's really good and I was always really active. As a little kid, I played soccer, or basketball and then, did karate in high school. Like I was always an active kid. And so with my mom's healthy meals, me staying active, even if I was overindulging in something, it was, wasn't a big deal because I was still thin. I wasn't noticing any differences. But then into middle school, late middle school, I didn't know at the time, but I was slowly starting to develop depression. I had a really hard time, with my father moving around a lot. So he did what was called geobatching. So it's when a military family, they'll stay in one location so that the family's lives are not disrupted. My father did a wonderful thing of, he went and was deployed to, he lived in Georgia and lived in Spain, through my middle school and high school years, and into college because he didn't want our lives to get disrupted. But then he was gone. And through my childhood, he was also deployments, after 9/11, he was a submariner, so he was gone a lot. And so that was really hard for me. I never really processed it or talked about it. And so had a lot of tough time with that and dealt with it later. But that builds up, and then you have your hormones and all that sort of depression stuff coming in. So it all perfect storms into I don't know how to deal with this, and food for like many becomes comfort. That fills a void. And so high school started and I was like I said I did the karate, but that was like not as frequent. And I had more access to, I got a job, so I got money and I got a car, so I have these things where I can go get food, so I could get more food. And so I definitely started gaining weight. I would say sophomore year of high school I really started to put on more weight. um I mean, I'm tall. I'm 5'11". I was 5'11" very early. I was very tall. I think I finished growing like middle of high school, and I grew up in an Italian town of like people are like 5'1", all of them. So, I mean, I already so like some of the weight distributed fine because of being so tall, but then like I started to notice stretch marks, and I started to, notice that clothes weren't fitting right, and I felt really uncomfortable in my body. But instead of, you know, trying to address it in a healthy way of like, okay, I need to do this or that. And I didn't know that. So instead, like I hid my body. I put more clothes on, I covered myself, and I didn't really acknowledge it. And I ate more. But I really ballooned, I would say, when I hit college because, like I just said, I'm going to talk about the students. First time on your own, and you don't have that like mom making healthy meals, and you don't have, you have the opportunity to like, if I want to eat like Pop Tarts and a can of Coke for breakfast, that's breakfast because who's going to stop me?
Yeah.
And I didn't really deal with the mental side. I had no idea what was going on. I then slowly started to realize I was really depressed and the depression was getting worse. And then I started to realize that I had a binge eating disorder, something that I never really identified until then. But I still didn't really do as much about it. I didn't I would try a couple times. Um, my mom was always trying to help me like, do we need to go see a nutritionist? Do we need to do Weight Watchers? Let's work out we'll do a 5K together. And she was always like super supportive in trying to like do that, but I always felt so bad about myself that I didn't even really want to acknowledge it in some ways. Um, and so I then graduated and I, got a job and started working in college. And then I just gained more and more weight. And so I peaked at 299 pounds. I got on the scale and I was like, I can't hit 300. I just can't. And at that point, I felt I most likely was pre-diabetic. I was never diagnosed, but like I had all the symptoms. Um, and I obviously felt really run down. And so that's when I found DDP um, in 2016. I found it through Reddit. There was a Reddit post of a guy who had a really good success with it, and so I like looked into it. And like many, I noticed that like you could like have different ability levels. So that's when I started to um, you know, check out the program. My dad had Dallas's original book. I cannot remember what it is. It's like got Dallas is like standing on the cover. It's like a white cover. But anyways, it's like one of his first books, and my dad had that, and I remember that. And so I think that's why I was like, oh, dad tried this, and I think he liked it, and so I'll try it. And so I started doing the YRG DVDs, throwing it back, and did those for a while. And then I started joining a dance, a hip hop dance class that I really liked, and so I had a lot of success with that. And I've always loved dance. I love movement. Despite being the weight I was, they were always so supportive of whatever I did. But then I hit a wall in like 2018. I was dancing, and I remember like you would do choreography to a song, right? And you'd try to get your way through the song. And I knew the choreography like in my bones for this song, but I was so fatigued and I was in such pain that I had to stop halfway through the song. My body felt like it was just collapsing. And I remember I got into the car that night with my best friend and I just broke. I was in tears. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, what's going on. And that's when I started the process of getting diagnosed with my autoimmune disorders. And it's taken, I mean, that was 2018, and so I mean, 4 years later, it's taken this long to get diagnosis with autoimmune disorders. There's not tests for all of them, so there's a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out what's going on with you. But I had to get treatment for that, and that was a setback in my health and fitness because I couldn't physically move. If I was in a flare up, like I would, physically be unable to move. My partner would have to assist me. It was really difficult. And so my mom has like four or five. Unfortunately, she's like a lot of autoimmune disorders, and it is genetic. My father also has several, and so it's unsurprising that I ended up with these. But I also presented pretty early. Presenting in your late 20s and early 30s for a lot of these is uncommon, and so it took the doc a while. But now, so I have Raynaud's, which affects your circulation. I'm basically cold all the time. I have arthritis in my hands which is super fun. And then I have what's basically pre-lupus. My numbers aren't severe enough to say it's full-blown lupus, but we're headed that way. But I manage it now. But at the time, that took a long time for me to like figure out not just medication, but like it's really important with degenerative joint disorders that you're moving, because they want you to keep your joints lubricated, they want you to keep active, and so I had to basically start DDP all over again. And so I, in 2018, really started to get that started again, and that's when the 19 challenge came in. And really, that was a godsend for me because I needed something to restart. And so I started at 299. If you look at the pictures, you can see in my eyes, I am hurting. I am not there. I'm severely depressed. Um, I'm just gone. I don't know who that person is. I really don't, looking back now. Um, and I was extremely lost with myself. And so I knew that I had to do these changes. Um, I didn't really have a goal in mind. I just knew I didn't want to. I mean, I knew I was heading towards diabetes. I already had these other medical issues, which are lifelong and incurable. So I have to do something. And that's what really pushed me. And at the same time, I knew I had to address my eating disorder, which is something I never really faced head on because yeah, I can go like lose weight in doing exercise, but if you don't look at your eating, like that's only going to be half the battle. And so I really then I started with the the DDP recommended phases, and so I went up to phase 3. I'm not as good with the organic just due to availability of what my area has, but gluten-free, dairy-free, which is recommended by my doctors anyways, because um, anti-inflammatory foods. You want to take away anything that's going to inflame your joints. So over time, it's a fight because I mean I still fight every day against food, but you know I switched over to intermittent fasting as well. So that helps curve the binge eating, and so I only eat. People ask I'm 21/3, which means 21 hours a day I don't eat, and I give myself a 3-hour window to eat one big meal and a small snack. Um, but primarily meats, veggies, very clean. No gluten, dairy, no sugar. I try really hard to keep as clean as possible. Um, I do I do try to keep the caffeine in check. That is a tough one for me. But usually it's like one coffee drink, throughout the day that I nurse, and then tea in the morning or the evening. But with that and with DDP, and like I mentioned, I had started running, and I was able to get down my weight in 2019. I got it down, like I said, about 30 pounds, and then that's when I really needed to like step forward with. I decided to do DDP every single day, because I was doing it in a schedule where it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then like I was allowing myself that space to fail. Like I need those time. I need firm lines for myself. Some people are way more accountable, but like if I was doing it every day and I was also posting about it every day, I knew I'd do it.
Yeah.
Which is how I started doing those posts, and so that's how it led me to do where I'm at now, where I do some form of activity because I do vary. So whether it be DDP or some other form of yoga or running or dance or hiking or whatever, but something every single day to keep me moving. And that got me to 110, 115 pounds down and counting.
I love it when you speak. I'm making notes over here, so don't think I'm not listening. I'm
No
making
worries.
notes, and I'm also, shit. It takes me 2 minutes to get out a sentence, and people from New England up there speak a lot quicker than I can think.
Sorry.
So yeah, so it takes me a while to get out a sentence.
I was literally in North Carolina yesterday and I had to keep slowing my words down. I felt bad.
Well, I mean, just do you. They'll figure it out. Shit. All right. Now, first thing I want to jump on is the eating disorder, and I'll tell you why. I really want to narrow down on this because I'm I wonder if I've got a binge eating disorder, and I've been trying to get therapy, and I went to a lady 4 times, and either she fired me or I quit. It's kind of vague how the last one ended up, but we didn't work out, and so now I'm trying to find another lady, and we're playing phone tag right now. But I don't know if I've got an eating disorder, but I know a binge eating disorder, but I know that I binge eat an awful lot. I diet, binge eat. So I know, um, I don't know if I meet the clinical um, criteria for a binge eating disorder, but I do know that I have the habit of doing it. So if there's something I can do, on the mental side to help me along this journey, I want to know. And so that's and and so when you said you were diagnosed, I think in college
Mhm.
with it, or
Yeah.
self-diagnosed. I don't know if you were diagnosed by a therapist or anything, but or a psychologist. But you were self-diagnosed in at least you were diagnosed and somewhat. So tell me about the binge eating. Tell me why you thought you had a binge eating disorder, and why.
Yeah. So I think so yeah, so I was diagnosed. I started to learn about it, but then was diagnosed by a therapist in college. But um like I said, I have a memory in first grade, it's extremely vivid, of my mom was making chocolate chip cookies. And there was a bowl of dough, and she used to teach at home daycare, so there was a bunch of other kids around, and she wasn't paying attention. And I remember I took the spoon and I ate more cookie dough, and I felt good because I had more, and then I had, you had another bite. And it was not just like, oh, a rush of getting away with it, but it was like I enjoyed eating. Like food was a good response for me. Um, and so I think that's what kind of like it's a really good example of like I can remember as early as first grade. So you're what, 6 years old, and this is something that it's built through your life. And I wake up every single day, and particularly when I was in the throes of it and it was so bad, that I wake up every single day and the first thing was food. What was I going to eat for the day? What was the first thing? It's the first thing I woke up. I was like, okay, what do I have in the kitchen? And then I would, eat whatever that was. And before I barely swallowed that last bite, I'm already thinking about what my next food was going to be. And most of the day was like that. It was and it's still, there's a lot of times where like, or I get really fixated on something. Like I really want pancakes. And I can't think of anything besides those pancakes until I eat them. But why am I eating them? I don't really have, I just want them. And then for me, it's one of those things where like it takes over my whole mind. I'm distracted because I want this food. And if I do indulge in it, sometimes it's a good feel, right? Because like, oh, you got that thing. Other times you'd eat it and then you feel absolute shame, because you just ate the thing that you're not supposed to eat. And then sometimes it would be like I couldn't stop myself, right? Like there were certain items which, they're called trigger foods of like if there was a pack of double stuffed Oreos in front of me, like there is no stopping me from eating that. Like, and I don't even realize I'm doing it, right? Your brain shuts off. Some part of you that's present and checked into the moment that's supposed to be mindful about this is gone. You were just sitting there and like mindlessly eating this until the rack is gone. My partner at the time, he would like bring this home, and he would bring them home for him. They weren't supposed to be for me because I wasn't supposed to be eating that. And I literally had to have him keep them in the other room because I knew if they were out here, oh here I'll have two here, I'll have two here, and then like all of a sudden I ate all of his Oreos. And but that was just a nonstop thing, and so it is that compulsion. Whether it's the wake up and all day you're thinking about the food, and even if you get that item, if I finally had the pancakes, it never feels good as you thought it was, as your brain's telling you going to be. I view it as like it is the addiction that you can never be sober from because you need food to live. If you have alcohol, that's the same way where you're constantly thinking about getting it. You need your next fix, you need your next, drink. But food, like you're always going to have to feed your addiction, but how you feed it has to change. And that's a huge mental hurdle. And people deal with it in different ways. For me, I did a lot of trial and error on how I'm eating, and right now so I live by myself, so I have a very strict control over what comes in my house. When I've had, a partner live with me in the past, I've had them have a separate cabinet to keep their food completely, that's their cabinet, to the point where like I had a little ribbon tied on their cabinet to remind myself that I shouldn't be going into there because I have to restrict myself. But like right now, I try really hard to make sure that junk does not enter my home, that trigger foods do not enter my home. But for not everyone's able to do that. People have families, they have families that sometimes aren't as supportive or just don't understand, or they just don't want to restrict their families because their families don't need those restrictions. And so, I am fortunate in that sense that I have to keep it, but that doesn't mean it's always happens. I have to grocery shop once or twice a week, and I have to white knuckle the cart at times to not put that particular item in the cart. Or I get home and I have bought that item, and then I fight with myself about eating that or not eating it. Because then I bought the item and I'm going to waste it and throw it away. Or are you going to indulge and have the
See,
item?
I can't. Yeah, I
Oh,
have a hard
maybe,
time with
yeah, maybe I'll try to pace it. Nah, you're not going to pace it. You're going to eat the whole thing and then you'll buy
that.
another one. You
Yeah.
know? It's a lot of those reality checks. And I mean, like I said, I still do it all the time. I do it less now that I have like all the built-in, like I said, like intermittent fasting's been a huge one for me. It's not for everybody, but I did it over the course of 3 months. I dialed it back. I super always want to say, like, with a disclaimer that with intermittent fasting, that is not a cold turkey moment. I slowly went from having breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks to slowly taking away meals until I was just eating at dinner. But that, again, like I've tried other things that don't work. It's very much what works for you. But for me, having that restriction to keeping it just at this time does help me eat a lot less. Particularly snacking was my difficulty. I could eat a meal and it would be a good meal, but then again, like I said, like ooh Reese's, ooh Oreos, ooh chips,
Hmm.
like it's all the snacks that's what gets me. And so not bringing that in the house, making sure I'm having those structured times, that has been like a huge change on how I manage that. But knowing that I'll never be sober from this is the part where I have to keep reminding myself every day and fighting myself every day about not giving into those indulgences.
Did you ever try Overeaters Anonymous?
Mhm.
OA?
Yeah, I did.
What was your
So
experience with OA?
it was all right. I thought the people were really nice. Particularly, I think that so the program, like any anonymous group, is like faith-based, and it doesn't
Hmm.
have to be for you, but I think it just happened to be the one I went to was really like, and I got my own like history with religion and stuff, and so
Hmm.
it for me felt uncomfortable because I was like, for me, I'm not turning to God to solve my problem. Like I really needed help with myself. And so I felt like when I got up to, to speak, at the meeting, I had people afterwards that were using a lot of like faith-based language. And again, I know not all of the anonymous meetings are like that. I think I just hit that one that's like a lot of people were very faith-based, and it just for me was super uncomfortable because it's not what was going to help me.
Yeah.
So then I kind of got discouraged because it was the only one in the area that worked with time that I could go. So I wasn't able to like try it again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tried it, and similarly, um, I mean, not for the same reasons, but for different reasons. I didn't. It didn't take. Just like anything, you shit when we try everything to
Mhm.
keep this damn weight off of us. But a lot of the reason I asked, a lot of the words that you talk about, the trigger foods and abstaining and never going to be sober from,
Mhm.
those are a lot of the lingo, or a lot of the words that the Overeaters Anonymous use,
Mhm.
in their stuff. So it's, but it's anything that works, more power to you. Um, so let me ask you this. What did and if, what did the when you got diagnosed with it back in college by either a therapist or a psychologist or whomever, what, how did they diagnose it, and what behaviors did they use to diagnose you?
Sure. So it was a lot of so it was a regular like psychiatrist that they were just talking about a lot of questions about like some things I talked about, like how my relationship was with food. Like they did ask like kind of how I ate throughout the day, and so where the struggle points and where the where are the points where it's easier in the day. And then again it goes back to the mental of like what they broke down what my relationship with food was, how I view it, what it makes me feel, what I get from it. And so having so as they understood over time that again, like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was using it to comfort myself, but again, I was constantly seeking it over and over. It's a compulsion.
Hmm.
And so they then over time said, I believe you that you have this binge eating disorder.
What did they prescribe, or what was their in their opinion? How should you have improved your situation?
So she particularly, so she was trained in eating disorders, and so one of her recommendations was this practice called mindful eating. Um, some people have heard this before of like, for the example, um, if you take a raisin and you put a raisin in your mouth and you have to hold it in your mouth and you have to like feel the raisin, observe the raisin, and then finally like chew it slowly, mindfully, really thinking conscientiously, basically slowing down what because
Hmm.
usually with the binge you just kind of hoover everything and you don't, like I said, you turn your brain off, you don't think about it. So the way that practice works, and that's a very simplified version of the practice, but it's designed to slowly over time get you to stop um hoovering the food and to slowly eat. So at one, it gives you like on a scientific level, it gives your brain and stomach a chance to catch up to signal that you're full, because obviously you blow past that if you're eating really fast. And then also, it's over time aims to change your relationship to food in the sense of that you're not just filling a void, that you're instead thinking about like what you're taking in. I took some from that, but for me, it was again because I was really so used to hoovering, it was really hard for me to slow down. Like now I'm a lot better about it. Depends on the like if I get home from a run and it's dinner time, forget it. Like I'm I'm ready to eat. But if there's other times where it's just a regular meal, like I can start to be a little more like what I'll do is like I'll eat the protein and like wait a little bit and then eat the veggie. Like not super long, but enough where like I'm giving myself the time to recognize that I'm slowing down to see how I'm feeling, how full I'm feeling. Um, and so that technique was what she really worked with to try to help me address it. It wasn't, entirely successful, but I think it gave me tools that I kind of back pocketed for much later down the road.
And that's what all this is about. It's filling that toolbox full of tools that help us as we go along. Because it's just like anything. Our situation is going to change. I mean, and the environment we're in is going to change, and you're going to no one tool is going to be the magic pill. You're going to have to.
Mhm.
It's a fight that we're going to have our whole life,
Mhm.
and we got to keep trying things that work. Now, the intermittent fasting, did you follow someone's recommendation like the obesity code, Dr. Fung, or did you do it on your own, or how did you get to the intermittent fasting part of eating?
I did do it on my own. I did a lot of research about like there's different types of intermittent fasting, but I saw that particularly for people who have binge eating disorders, it's helpful to curb your the time window in which you give yourself to eat. And so I realized that if I only had so much time, like I could only eat so much in a certain amount of time. I'm sure I could eat plenty in 3 hours, but like I knew that if I gave myself less opportunity to snack and to have these things and indulge, I think that was what gave me the space to go, okay, I can give my body a break. And obviously, with the intermittent fasting too, that gives your body more time to process what's already, your fuel, what you're using. And so I had to be really intentional about it, particularly as a runner. You burn really high, really hard. So I will say on the days that I run, I do plan typically it's running after work, so it works out that I run and then I eat, because otherwise if I do a run in like the morning, I do have to break my fast and eat something, but usually it's very fuel based, like a protein, high protein item. But aside from that, yeah, it's just I went to only eating in the evening, aside from when I'm running, because if you, I've learned very quickly, you run 10 miles, you don't do so good if you don't eat and put something back in the tank.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of adjustment, a lot of research, because I didn't know what would work for me, and so I found that, like, I took away, the first thing I did was, like I said, it was over 3 months, so I took away breakfast, and so the first thing I would do is a mid-morning snack, and then once I felt good about that, okay, let's back it up to lunch, and then back it up to the snack, and then back it up to dinner, and so finally we're just at dinner. And so now it was the other side of, okay, I need to stop myself eating after dinner, because I'm like, okay, okay, cool, we made it to that time where I can eat. Now I also need to be able to put the brakes on it too, because cool, I can eat dinner, but then I'm going to want to keep eating. So because I haven't eaten all day, and I wasn't super hungry, because now your body's used to it. But then I gave myself, this drug, right? And you've wanted it all day, and then you finally gave yourself, so your body's like, woo, let's eat. So it's now learning the other side of, okay, I did really good and I held off all day. Let's not mess it up on the other side by continuing to eat. And so that's when you cap yourself, to have that time window, which can be difficult some days, even now. There's times where I'll finish my meal, and that's why I allow myself, like, I wouldn't say it's always a dessert, because to some people yogurt or something is not a dessert, but like I'll allow myself that small secondary snack, because then it's like, okay, I did get to have that little bit more. So for me that feels good, because then I'm like, okay, now I'm done and I'm gonna get ready for bed, and nothing else. So for me, that routine and restriction is what I thrived on, because it kept my indulgences to a minimum.
Now I tried intermittent fasting twice,
Mhm.
um, hard. I mean, I really, really tried it hard. And I read the obesity code by Dr. Fung, and I tried to follow some of his stuff. And I can tell you that the obesity code was the first book that I read, and I said, "Well, this book describes me." I mean, I really felt that the insulin resistance and the everything that he described and talked about in the book described my life, and so I'm 100% believer in intermittent fasting. Even though I can't figure out how to make it work for me, I can't control myself during that eating window. I mean, I won't stop eating. Period.
Mhm.
And I'm able to do the fast no problem. But when I know that it's time to eat, I'm gonna eat, and I'm gonna keep eating, because I know I've got to stop at
Mhm.
some point. And I, I could, and I could never make it work. But I'm a believer in it, but I just don't know how to make it work.
Yeah, the stopping is definitely the hardest part. Like you said, like, I got used to not eating all day. That's fine. I mean, there's some days that it bothers me, like, especially when you're having a bad day or you're stressed or something, like, you're gonna want it more anyways, because that's your response. Um, Particularly if I'm in a flare up and I feel horrible. Like, all I want to do is, like, get home from work, collapse in the couch, and just have food and just comfort myself, because I'm in a lot of pain and I'm feeling very tired. Um, but aside from that, like, yeah, the stopping is honestly the hardest part for me. Is like, I have to really set out, like, what I'm eating. Like, so I know what dinner is, but like I have to set the snack out mentally ahead of time, because otherwise, I'll go back into the cabinets. And some days, yeah, I do, like, it's hard to, like, not go and get that extra snack, and sometimes it is. But that's what's really helpful for me, is that I have almost nothing in the house, to which at the time I get really mad at my past self for, like, not stocking the cabinets, but I know later, like, that's going to be a good thing, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't keep any of that in the house, to keep myself from, when I have those really bad times. Like, if I need to indulge, like, I absolutely have to, fine, here's popcorn, or here's dried fruit and nuts, It's not something I really want, but if I'm truly wanting it, I'm truly hungry, okay, here, fine, but you're going to have a healthier option. You're not going to have, cookies or whatever, because it doesn't exist here.
Yeah, and you said earlier that you worked through the phases of DDP yoga nutrition. You did the
Mhm.
phase one, phase two, phase three, and so it sounds like you've incorporated the DDPY nutrition into the intermittent fasting,
Yep.
and that seems to be what's working for you right now.
Yeah, well, particularly because I can't have inflammatory foods. It causes so much discomfort in my joints to have any sort of dairy or gluten. It causes a huge amount of inflammation, particularly with my arthritis. My hands will be the size of sausages if I try to have like a glass of milk or whatever. Um, and so that I was doing that before I even really knew I needed to be doing it on a medical level, because I had started phase three before I got my autoimmune diagnosis, and my doc was then like, "Okay, you can't have gluten and dairy." I'm like, "Good news, I already don't do that." So the only thing I really had to cut from that was sugar, which is really hard because sugar is a very tasty item, and so thankfully I've always been a salty over sweet person, so it wasn't as difficult. But I mean, I think it was really hard to not I try not to have any like I don't do candy. I also don't do I don't drink. I don't have any alcohol because for me that's a wasted calorie. But I try really hard not to have any drinks with calories. The only one I allow is my one is the coffee in the morning. I usually have a it's like a 0 calorie sweeteners and all that stuff, but soy milk will have some calories. But aside from that, like water or a diet tea or something, but really making sure I'm not indulging all those things that could cause inflammation. But phase three was incredibly helpful with that because it does cut out all those things. Like, you know, phase three, gluten free, dairy free, they try to, as organic as you can. Basically, it's meats and veggies, which is where I'm at. I definitely will say I do indulge the red meat probably more than I should. I love a steak. I love like all that. I love so I try to do chicken and fish more, but cows taste very very tasty. So that's always a little more difficult, but at the very least I'm getting meats and veggies in.
Well, Texas doesn't believe in eating red meat.
I wish, man, it's expensive up here, I will say. It was funny because I talk to Justin Dobbins all the time, and he'll say like, "Oh, I got this such and such a pack of steaks, and it cost me what seems to me like 5 cents." Like he's like, "This cost a nickel," and I'm over here paying like my whole half a paycheck for a steak, and so oh man, I just sometimes get a little jealous about that.
Yeah, well, I think I took his podcast interview, and
Hmm.
I think he said he gets his meat, from like a process from somebody. He cuts out the middleman and goes to the some, and it's a certain grade too. He's
Hmm.
very specific on what type of meat, but he's um, so it's pretty interesting. But he eats a lot of meat. He's almost carnivore.
Oh, he is absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think I could eat. Well, he does keto, so his is like all that dairy. He'll post a picture and send me pictures, and the meat part looks great, but then he'll have like a pound of cheese, and my whole body was like, that hurts. I can't. I can't. Whew, that would not go well.
Yeah. So tell me, you mentioned inflammatory foods, which you mentioned dairy, you mentioned gluten, you mentioned
Hmm.
sugar. Are there
Yep.
any other inflammatory foods that you avoid?
So the only other one is you have to be kind of careful with legumes. So peanuts, particular. So I was a peanut butter like absolute junkie on I love peanut butter. I would,
Me too.
whew, good Lord, I cannot have it in the house.
I
So
to
because
say,
I
like
was,
you were
yeah.
talking about earlier about calling you in the cabinet.
Mhm.
If there's a jar of peanut butter in there, I'm gonna eat that whole some bitch. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just gone. Just mark it in the book.
Yep. I get that because I sit there with the spoon and all of a sudden I don't know where the peanut butter went. It was
Yeah.
there. I swear. Yep. So that one I didn't know it, and so I was having some really frequent flare-ups last year, which was not normal because I pretty much managed them, and so it started to uptick more. And then my doctor had me like walk through. I don't usually food journal, but she wanted me to just to figure out like if there was anything. And she's like, "You're eating peanut butter like multiple times a day." I'm like, "Yeah, it's like protein and good." And she's like, "No, like for you, it's causing you to have this." So I was like, unfortunately, I gave it up, and whew, that was a tough one. But for the better, because I mean, if I really wanted to, I can do the almond butters and stuff. But yeah, apparently I didn't know that one. That it's some of these things that are sneaky, but yeah, for the most part, it's the gluten, the dairy, the sugar, all of those things inflame your joints. And if everyone's affected differently, everyone's a little bit affected by it basically, but some people, unfortunately, particularly with my, the autoimmune stuff, that the joints they'll eat that up and then they just everything puffs up really bad and it can cause a lot of I have a lot of symptoms once a flare up starts and it causes pretty much all of them. So I really try to make sure I'm not eating anything. I have to check labels a lot, but on top of all of that, I also have um I can't eat cruciferous vegetables. My body doesn't without TMI, my body doesn't digest them very well. So that's like the cruciferous family is broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts. Not that I really cared for any of these vegetables to begin with, but that it cut out a lot of vegetables for me. So I have to be careful about having those in my diet just because if I eat those, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I'll say that.
Well, those are the vegetables that I eat all the time. What vegetables do you eat?
A lot of tomatoes, carrots, tons of lettuce, a lot of tomatoes, carrots. I do potatoes, but you got to be careful with those, of course, in moderation. I love asparagus. I would eat asparagus every day. Green beans. So there's plenty of other ones. I'm just starting to get into eating radishes more. I'm like learning how to cook radishes in different ways, which is cool. That's one I never really learned about before, but yeah, it made me try a lot of different things. I'm finding some of them I like, some of them I don't. Like I tried eggplant, and I'm like fully certain I'll never have an eggplant again. I'm good.
Yeah.
Just all set there. But yeah, so I had to like shift a little bit because the cauliflower particularly is such a like health substitute for everybody. And I and that's how I found out I've had these issues because I never really ate it before, but then I was eating it a bunch and all these things of all these, and then so I was using it and I was getting really sick, and then that's how we figured out that I was having, this I can't eat this like family of vegetables for whatever reason.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you about your Raynaud's. I mean, your autoimmune and your Raynaud's. Is Raynaud's the one where you got dry eyes where you don't things are you don't make the liquids?
That's actually part of lupus. Some of them, there's a couple of them. A lot of them overlap. The Raynaud's is a circulation disorder,
Oh, okay.
so it particularly affects your extremities, so hands, feet, nose. Like if you touch my hands right now, it's warm in here. It's about
Yeah.
I always have to keep the house warmer. I feel bad for anybody that comes over. Currently, the house is at like 74 degrees, which for me is almost comfortable. But if you touch my hands right now, they're ice cold. And that's just how they are, because the circulation basically doesn't push out to your extremities. And same thing with my feet. You almost never see me with bare feet unless it's like middle of the summer, because I just can't get them warm enough. And like if you touch the tip of my nose, I always say it's like a dog, right? The dog's nose is always cold. Same thing. Winter's really rough.
Well,
I
that's
am
what I
definitely
was
job
thinking.
searching further south. I'm definitely looking at some jobs that are not as cold because it's really so once I get cold, it's really hard for my body to warm back up. Once I'm cold, it also causes a lot of pain. So I summer is great, but winter I actually have these electric gloves with batteries built in. They're heated gloves. I have to be very careful because once I lose the circulation, it takes a very long time to get the circulation back in my hands.
Yeah, you definitely need to move to a warmer climate. You need to
I'm
be
working
in
on it.
Florida, except
Yeah.
Florida is I don't know. Florida's a little even crazy for people in Texas even think Florida people from Florida are crazy. So
Yeah, no, I'm looking at jobs like North Carolina area,
yeah.
like reasonable temperatures, not too hot, not too cold. That's where we're kind of hoping for.
Yeah. Now the autoimmune. So the way I understand autoimmune, I may not have it right, is that it's your body is attacking itself.
Hmm.
Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, so your body obviously makes a bunch of different types of cells, and so autoimmune is not always, but very often genetic. So like I said, both my parents have several different disorders, but basically at some point, your body decides that these completely healthy cells are the enemy because it thinks they're bad, and your body is designed to like attack unhealthy cells or anything that's bad in your body. But instead, it's attacking healthy cells, which then causes deterioration. How they are attacked and what they're attacking is basically how you get these different autoimmune diseases. And so, like I said, they can present much younger, but traditionally you'll see them from your 40s and beyond, because your body is also deteriorating later in life. So that's where you
Mm-hmm.
start to see these exhibited a lot more. But like for like me and some others, there are some earlier presenting in your 20s, sometimes even as young as your teens, but it's much more rare. So like I said, as you get older, they present a lot more presently, like in your 40s and 50s.
All right. And you said they affect the joints more than anything else.
Most of them have some sort of thing with the joints, but it depends on the disease. Like there's a lot of like the Venn diagrams, the circles overlap.
Uh,
If you had them, like a ton of them overlap symptoms, which is also makes it really hard to diagnose because I have this disease which has like these five symptoms, and this one has these five, and three of them are exactly the same, but it's those two on each side. Like you have to kind of figure it out over time. There are a couple of them where you can actually get a test and they're like, yes, it's absolutely this disease. But majority of them, it's very trial and error. I get mouth sores, and that's one that isn't as common in some of the other diseases, which really was obviously not great, but helpful to my doctor to go, okay, that really narrows it down to these set of diseases that it could be, and then we'll work from there and try to figure out what's going on. And so it's a lot of blood tests and stuff. So you see, like with Scott French talking recently that he had to go get the blood panel. I get those every 3 to 6 months because they're tracking all of these stats to figure out what you have and what's going on.
so does your autoimmune disorder have a name?
Yeah, so Raynaud's is an autoimmune disorder. Um, the arthritis is an autoimmune disorder, and then my third one, like I said, is pre-lupus. So
Pre-lupus.
I'm on my way to having lupus, but not full blown because I haven't gotten as bad yet. I will inevitably fully have lupus. There's no stopping that. It's just that they can't qualify it until you hit a certain number in the blood tests.
So now is lupus? I thought, it's showing my ignorance here, but I thought lupus was like some kind of cancer or something. Is that not right?
No, it's not. It's not cancer, but it's definitely one of the more severe autoimmune diseases. There's a lot of symptoms affecting, um, like you said, I could have the production of my fluids, so like dry eyes. I get really bad skin rash. So if I'm in a full flare up, there's a lot of things. So I'll get a skin rash that starts back here, and it'll cover my neck and cover my face. Um,
Mm.
it leads to hair loss. I very creatively style my hair, but if I pull it back, you can see here that I have a lot of hair loss. But it also leads to extreme fatigue and what's called brain fog. I have cognitive delays. So most days I'm fine. Like today, I'm clearly like very alert, but there'll be other days where I have difficulty forming sentences. Like I truly can't, like I have difficulty with language, or there'll be days where my body physically collapses to the point that I need to be physically assisted to, get up and move. Um, Unfortunately, I live by myself, so that's not always easy. I am actually really fortunate that I live on campus in a handicap building, so I actually have handicap bars in my bathroom and stuff. So thankfully for me, I have a lot of accessibility in my own home, but there can be times where it's incredibly debilitating. But again, that goes back to the health and wellness of like, if I am taking care of myself and I have a bunch of medications that I take, most of the time you can manage it. But there will be those times where you just can't do anything, but there's a flare up, and I really do have some phenomenal coworkers that are extremely supportive of me, so they know like when I'm having a bad time. They're either my boss will be like, go home for the day, or work from home for the day, so that I can kind of adapt my life. I've had to make a lot of life changes because there's just things that you can and can't do, and these flare ups don't have a schedule. you know I might have a really important thing I'm doing for work, and I have this big event, and then I'm in the middle of a flare up and I have to push through, or I have to get help. Asking for help is not in my spirit. I'm very independent, and so I've had to learn that, right? To learn to ask for help and learning to say when you're not okay, because that's really vulnerable and really transparent. And so it's really hard sometimes to say, I'm not feeling right. I'm not doing well. Like I had a student the other day, I was having a really bad brain fog day, and the student asked if I was okay. And I was really mad at myself after that they saw that weakness in me. And I was mad at myself that I let them see that. But then I thought about it more later, and I realized it's okay that they're seeing it. I told them what was wrong. And then they probably thought nothing of it past that, but ate at me for a while of like being less than, because you work so hard to fight it, so that on those days that you are weak and vulnerable, it can be really difficult. And like I said, like having all those symptoms crop up, whether I'm sitting there and I've got a face full of rash, I have mouth sores, I can't move, I'm X, Y, and Z, and it's like 10 different symptoms going at once. It's really hard to not just collapse and, like I said, give in to food, not work out. It's really tough to keep going. And so I applaud anybody that has these things and deals with them. There's some that have much worse than I do. A lot of people, like MS, multiple sclerosis, is an autoimmune disorder that's absolutely crippling and shortens your lifespan. And I just applaud the people that fight that every day. I can't imagine them. And it's the same way that I couldn't imagine my mom years ago. Like I said, she, got up every day, took care of two kids, made food and stuff, and had all of what I have now. I can't imagine doing what she does, what she did. So it's definitely a lifelong like fight.
The um, it is lupus. You said that that the lupus become the pre-lupuses will become
Mhm.
lupus. Is there
Yeah.
not anything that they can do to
Mm-mm.
prevent that from happening?
No, no, I don't know of any autoimmune diseases that are curable. I don't think any are. They're treatable. Some have medications, but again, it's a lot of trial and error. I currently take like the same three medications every day, but it's taken me years to figure out that those work. For me, like you have to like try these things and they don't work. Okay, let's try these things. And then I do have additional medication. So if I'm in that really bad flare up, I have other additional things I need to take. And again, that's really in tandem with making sure that I'm taking care of myself, and knowing what also can trigger the flare-ups. Some of it you just can't help, like your body just quits, but knowing that if I'm not getting enough sleep or I'm really stressing out, that's putting more stress on my body, which is making me more vulnerable to getting something like that. So while we can't cure it, there's ways to treat or prevent, and make it kind of take to lessen those things.
Now, you had said earlier that the pictures from when you were 299
Hmm.
in 2018 or 19 when you were starting the first positively unstoppable contest, that mentally you were not in a good place, that you uh, obviously weren't happy with life or with your lot in life. Can um, has all of that mental side, has that been a transformation as well?
Absolutely. I think that, and I think I've written about this before of like, I am not that person. And like the Caitlin K that was in that photo is gone. Like we had a funeral for her. Like she's gone. She was just, I feel like that was like another lifetime. Almost like it almost feels like I started again. You know, it. the mentality that I had then, how I see life, how I approach things. Um, it was funny because I was in a job interview yesterday, and someone asked me about like goals and how I see life and how I approach things, right? And I used that as an example. I told them a very quick elevator pitch about like my experience with my health and wellness, and I said that has had ripple effects across my entire life. I didn't just lose 120 pounds. I completely changed who I was as a person to get to this point. Um, and I don't think I even realized when I started that that's what had to happen to get to me to where I am now, to be okay with who I am, to be proud of the accomplishments and to continue to work, to continue to fight. Like you have to make these changes that are so much bigger than you anticipate having. It's changing who you are, what your beliefs are, in ways that are irrevocable. I don't know how to go back to being that person. I think I still absolutely have some of the pitfalls and some of the difficulties that that person had, but for me that's a distant person. Like I don't relate to her in the same way. And it's funny because at the same time, I am still working to mentally change myself to understand that physically, visually not that 299-pound person. Like I still see that person a lot of the time. I catch myself thinking like that and I go, no, that's not what I am anymore. Um, I read the David Goggins book last year, that Can't Hurt Me, and
Yeah.
that for me spoke volumes of you can push yourself so much harder than you think you can. I do think he goes like to a level that I will never quite be at because that man was like,
He's not human.
whoo,
Yeah, he's not human.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a whole different plane of existence. But
What
there was parts in that
okay, go
struck.
go
No, no,
ahead,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just going to say there's a part in there that tells a lot that if you read in between, he went through, I don't know, SEALs three the buds SEALs buds take three times. He became a Navy SEAL, but he wasn't selected for any of the best I could tell. That's not my world. I
Mhm.
don't know anything about it, but he wasn't like picked for a SEAL Team Six or SEAL Team
Mhm.
Five or and then he went back to Ranger School. So I think he was even too crazy for the SEALs. So when you're too crazy for the craziest fuckers on the planet, that says a lot. You know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think his book is very like take it with a grain of salt, right? Like
Yeah.
I think some people read that book and they think they got to be like him and I'm like, "No, no, I think the
That,
lesson from that book is like very much a fraction of what that man did." Like,
that's right. That's
oh
right.
yeah. But it was good. Like I think that he does the activities at the end of each chapter if you read it, and one of them was like putting the post-it goals on the mirror in the bathroom. And it has to be, and I've done this activity with so many people. I'm like, it has to be a tangible goals. Like it has to be, because like I hear so many times, and I think it's a great thing. People are like, I just want to be happy with myself. That's great, but that's not like, achievable in a sense of like you can say like this is how you did it. And so I really liked like for me, I'm a very goal-oriented person. I'm very organized, very type A in that way. So I literally like here I have different colored post-its, and they all have the different categories, and they're all in my bathroom. And every morning and night while I'm brushing my teeth, I make myself reread the post-its, right? And so I think that was actually super helpful. One of the activities I took from him of like, you have to change your mindset, but then you have to keep changing it. You have to keep reminding
Hmm.
yourself those goals that you're working on, and you have to put them right in your face, which is why they're right in my mirror, because I have to know that today I worked on that one, but I've been letting that one go for weeks. So why am I not addressing that one? And I need to look at that one again. It's that constant push, but only you are going to do it. I think that's a huge part of that too, of like build a support system. Fantastic. But you are only the one that's accountable to yourself. You're the only one that knows what you do every minute of the day. So it's only on you to make that decision. And I really love that about him and about that. That was a huge part of shifting my mentality over time.
Well, if I have my dates right, then you were going through this weight loss during. I assume you had to write like I forget what they call them now. Similar to a thesis, master's thesis,
Hmm.
and then a doctorate
Yep.
dissertation, capstone. Was it a capstone? Is that what they called the master's thesis? A
Yeah,
capstone.
yeah, I did a capstone for my master's, yeah.
And so uh, you would. It sounds like you were doing all this during your weight loss journey, and because you said you just recently became received your doctorate,
Hmm.
and so it sounds like you were battling this illness, going to school, battling the stresses of a master's and doctorate program, and doing the DDPY and competing in these contests. I mean, is that a true statement?
Yeah, yeah, definitely juggling a few things at once. I think that I was dragging heels a bit too on the doctorate of like it's hard because the way the doctorate works is that you take all these classes and then they just kind of drop you off into your study like then you have to start writing. And so at that point there's no, I mean there's accountability obviously, there's some deadlines and stuff, but really it's on your own. And so I think if I hadn't changed the mentality in the way I have more recently, I think I probably would have finished, but either not finished as strong or as, as fast as I had, because I had taken time where there was like a year where I was writing, but it was really slow. But then because I had made such mental shifts that now I'm that person that's checking myself, that's driving myself to get it done. So then I was able, to finally finish and, get it done this year. Um, but it's a lot. Yeah, it's absolutely, it was a lot to juggle. And so to have all of those things going on at once, you have to build all of that for yourself because otherwise, how are you going to get it all done?
Mm. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, you're definitely not an underachiever, I can tell you that.
Not anymore.
Yeah. All right. So tell me how DDP yoga fit into your life and how it changed or helped you transform your life.
Yeah. So like I said, I had started it in 2016 and bought the DVD pack. And I did those for a long time, the YRG DVDs. And eventually they came out with the DDP Yoga DVDs. So I think I updated and I had gotten a second pack because um, also because yay new exercises because at the time there wasn't I wasn't on the app, so like you do the DVD so many times you're like ready to burn a hole in them. So I finally I got the new DVDs, and then I'm not quite sure exactly when, but I remember hearing about the app. So then I got that, and so I've like slowly evolved over time of like I was doing the workouts on the DVDs, and then I joined the app, and then I saw one of the videos in what I think it was like a Fabulous Friday or something, but Dallas was talking about the Facebook group. And I didn't know there was one until he mentioned that, so I went to look for it, and I joined that. At the time, it was a lot smaller. Now it's huge. But starting to get to see different people and their journey, like I said, I had found everything initially on Reddit. Um, your story gets shared there every few months. I always see it's always so funny to see because like I saw it was posted like 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, hey, I know that guy, and it's like on the front page of Reddit. It's so funny to
Yeah.
see that. But yeah, so like I was kind of seeing these things sporadically over time, but um, so then I joined the Facebook community and I realized like I could do more than just sitting there and doing DVDs over and over. So I had joined the app and they preset when you pick it, it presets the workouts for you. So initially I was just doing that because I didn't want to mess with it too much because I felt like I didn't know enough to like customize it. So I did that by myself for a bit, but then I noticed that there was other people that were, doing different types of workouts and they do fun challenges and stuff. And so I slowly started to like connect, and try to do different things. And then once the pandemic hit and people started to do the online classes, I was able to join. I kind of Goldilocks my way through trying those different workouts and trying the different instructors of like what worked for me. So I did like a bunch of them, but like the biggest part of that was like finding the community for me. Um, I've said it before of like I don't think I would have had the success and the journey that I've had without the people that I found through the DDP community. I think that like I found joining the Shamrock Fitness group and doing the workouts and so I met people through there and Travis being his Travis self being all crazy and it's a fun time and people were having a good time and doing a workout. That was different for me. Group fitness was never really my inclination. I'm not a super extroverted person, and so for me, it was like allowing myself to like connect with people from my home. So it was like a good middle ground. And then I met Tina Gaspard, and I always say like she was the reason I met everybody else. She Miss Social Butterfly knows everybody, and like so we became really close. I believe fall of 19. I started to work out again, and so in the 2020 is when I really started to get to know people. And so she dragged me to all the work. She's like, because I had asked her, I was like, oh, I've seen you done some of the Zoom workouts, like, can you suggest? And she immediately was like, here's this class and here's this class and go take this and like be in Tina. So I got to meet her through that, and then she introduced me to what we now have is the Warrior Women, which were Samantha Sheets, Stephanie Trujillo Kelly, Melissa, and then Tina Gaspard, and so the five of us started just a Facebook Messenger group. Just to support each other through doing the challenge, and even if you weren't doing the challenge, just to have a space to talk and feel comfortable. And so, we were always connecting through the DDP workouts. Sometimes we would do, like, if one of us was having a really hard day, we'd say, let's go do an app workout together. So, which app okay, you want to do stand up? Let's go do stand up. All right, so we'll get on and do stand up together. And so having those opportunities to connect in a way that, like, we had a support system. And so from that grew the Warrior Women, and we grew it into the Facebook group. Because we created a space that we really liked. We'd all met through the DDP yoga page, but we wanted a page for designed specifically for women, where women felt comfortable to celebrate each other. And so what the group is now is a space where we host all sorts of different live discussions and all sorts of different events and challenges and really just celebrating one another's victories. A place that, you can ask questions and, talk about things in a way that it's a smaller group, but it's still like incredibly supportive and by just being women, there is specific women's issues. So we also allow that space where you might not feel as comfortable if there's, men in the group or you wanting to post something that's very vulnerable. So we want to offer that for them. And so without the DDP community, like we wouldn't have this. So that directly fed into that. And then having the Shamrock group, I got to meet so many people. I winning the contest then after, so I built this community and then I won the 2020 possibly unstoppable challenge, meaning I met Scotty Boots and Candy and Justin, which are family to me now. Like I was incredibly fortunate getting to meet those people. And so we went to the PC, we had our time there, and we have a group chat. We haven't stopped talking since. I talk to these people every day. So I have the Warrior Women, I have my Shamrock group, I have my Unstoppable, and I talk to all three groups every single day. They're a huge part of like why I continue to go. And they've also been a really big factor in me learning again the vulnerability stuff of like I I'm always that person that I never wanted to be like, I feel like crap because I don't want to be a burden on anybody else. I don't want anyone else to have to take on my weight. And so they've really taught me that it is okay to just say that you're not okay. Um, and it's also a space where I can make friends and celebrate people because I'm not always really good at like I'm like it's one of those things I always say I'm slightly terrified for an actual in-person DDP meetup because it's like for me that's an incredibly overwhelming thing to think about like even 50 people, let alone more coming at me at once. Like that's a lot of people to talk. I can't imagine. And I'm like a lower tier. I can't imagine like for example you go into an event, like forget it. I
Yeah.
don't know how to like totally Oop, no, no. And so it's one of those things where like I can comfortably meet people, and I've learned how to do it. But like again, it's all through this DDP community of like wanting to be better, and I think surrounding yourself with people who also want to be better. I think that's a huge part of that, and so that's something I really love of like having that energy and having that community, and that's like it means so much to me and something I never anticipated because when I started this, I was doing it by myself and I always thought I would be by myself doing it, and instead now I'm doing it with like a massive family of people, which is super cool.
All right. This is a part of a question I usually add at some point, but I tell them I want you to tell someone who say is not familiar with DDP yoga and our community. Um,
Hmm.
Tell them about the competition. Tell them about the Shamrock group, the DDP yoga group, the Warrior Women group. How can if someone wanted to find out what all this is about, how would they go about finding out? Becoming a part of this.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I've converted several friends and family members already to do so. I've done the elevator pitch before to some people. I will say I've never actively recruited or told anybody they should do it. I always wait for someone to be ready and ask me about it. Like I'm never going to be that person that like pushes something. I want you to be ready. But when somebody is ready to come to me and say, "Hey, talk to me about this," I'm always really happy to because it's been such a wonderful positive experience in my life. And so um the first question is what is DDP? And so what I explain to people is that it is yes, it's the word yoga has been in it, but it's so much more that it is an accessible workout for anybody. And I mean anybody. I say that every time. I said you can be in a bed, you can be in a chair, you can be in a canoe, you can figure it out. There is some way to modify for you. You can do that. And I think that's the biggest part for me of why that has meant so much, and that's the first thing I share is that it really is truly for anybody's workout in any walk of life. um, and then I talk about the community aspect of all of what I just spoke on. Because I encourage people of like absolutely try this out, see if it works for you, but there is so much more if you join this Facebook group. There's so much more because there's what are we at, like over 70,000 people in that group
Mm-hmm.
now. You're gonna
Yeah.
find your person in there, right? You might,
Yeah.
it might take time, but I guarantee you there is somebody in there that is going to resonate with you, that you can connect with, and reach out to and find some sort of camaraderie with to build that. So like when I have, like I said, like I have people like the Warrior Women, or I have people like Shamrock, and I have these people that are so important to me. You can absolutely have that because there's so many people in there, and if you're willing to take that second of being scared or awkward or vulnerable and make a post, you'll see how many people are willing to support you in your life and the choices that you're making. Because again, we're all there to want to be better for ourselves. And so we want to support you in being better for yourself as well.
And so now the Facebook group is DDP Yoga, all one word. The Tell them how to find the Warrior Women if someone wants to participate in that.
Yeah, so if you search for Warrior Women, there's a W logo. It looks like this. So there's like the two lines. So that's our logo. You can also search in the DDP Yoga group. It'll come right up. The DDP Yoga company has been incredibly amazing. They last month also were super supportive. So they've tagged us in some of the stuff because we had a live event with them, and getting to talk about what our group was and supporting us being Women's Month. So that was really cool as well.
And then the Shamrock group, is he let other? I mean, everybody I talk to just raves about Shamrock Travis. So I don't really know him. At least I don't remember knowing him, and except through social media. And
Hmm.
but everybody, I've never heard anybody say anything negative about the guy. But does his group allow anybody come in, or is it like a private group, or what is it?
Yeah, so he has like the Facebook group, which is, you just search Shamrock Fitness. So anybody's welcome in there. And then like he has this website, which is shamrockfitness.org. And so like he has his actual own website, but he has the Facebook group, and they'll just post fun things. Like he did a class the other day online, and it was like a really intense class. So I did like a Shamrock Shake challenge, right? And I was like, whoever completes it, we'll do some merch or something just for fun challenges. He's got a charitable run coming up in May as well. So it's again a lot of community-based stuff, but anybody's welcomed. And yeah, I mean, like you can't say a bad word about the guy. He's one of the most supportive people I know. And he just will go the extra mile for anybody who's coming to him and saying like, "Hey, I need help with this." There's plenty of people like they would finish a class and ask him about how do I modify something, or I'm trying to figure out how to do this and that. And he was just such a supportive and wonderful instructor. And I think that's why when I was trying out all the instructors, he connected so much for me, because he just cares so deeply about the community and being a part of that, and creating, because we talk about the Sham Fam, like it truly is that he really wants everybody to be a part of that and welcome everybody, in all walks.
Now, gain your worth. That's your shirt. What? Tell me what that means.
Earn your worth.
Earn your
Uh,
worth. Earn your worth.
yeah. So this is a shirt that I created. I think last year I worked on creating the design, and so in Celtic mythology, there is the entity the Morrigan, and the Morrigan is a mythical, kind of a woman, but not really. It's just like more of an entity, and she calls men to battle and inspires them, and creates their passion to fight, in like a positive way of like spurning you into your energy. And she is very much like a supporting, protecting, kind of a concept. And so she's represented through the crow, which is why I have that, and the Triskelion, which is the Celtic symbol behind it. It's like the three knots, because the Morrigan is like three symbols. And so for me, earn your worth particularly meant, because everyone like talks about like knowing that you're worth something. And that's great that you know that this is your worth, but you need to earn that every day. And how you earn that completely varies. But the fact that you know that you are worth that fight, which is something I tell people all the time. I go, you are worthy of that. You are worth your own life. You are worth taking the time to fight for your own self, to fight for your health, to fight for your wellness, to fight for your family, to fight for whoever, right? And so earning your worth means that you're going to take the time to not only knowing what you need to do, but every day doing that in some form. That could be meeting your workout goal, eating the right thing, getting to sleep on time, drinking the water, or it's the care of like I went and spent time with my family because that's what I really needed to do. It's caring for yourself in all those ways, because yes, you are worthy, but you need to keep proving that to yourself. And so I want people to earn their worth in that way.
I love it. I love it. How do you spell Morgan?
Morrigan is Morrigan.
Or like a Morgan. Are you Irish?
Yeah, if we did the ancestry DNA, I'm like half and half Scottish and Irish.
I spent some time in Scotland. I want to do that damn one of those ancestors or 23andMe. I'd like to
Yeah.
do one of my daughter did it, but she hadn't showed it to me yet. She told me a little bit about it, but she said we have some Cro-Magnon, which answers a lot of questions, in our life. But I just felt so at home in Scotland, man. I mean,
Hmm.
it felt like home. I'm gonna be so disappointed if I do that damn ancestry.com and it doesn't find any link to Scotland. I'm gonna be just mortified.
Oh no, I know exactly what you mean. I went to Scotland a few years ago, and that's what I said is like I have actually it was a feeling. I remember specifically I was like
Yeah.
standing out on a mountain, and it was a visceral feeling of home. Like I felt so
Mm-hmm.
connected to a place that I had never really felt connected before. And I know I'm going to go back, there's no doubt. Like I love the Highlands, and it was just such a feeling of like I was home. And
Yeah.
so it's something that like later, like long term, like kind of goal. I would love to retire there because
Mm.
it's just like that's the place I want to be. I absolutely loved it.
Where did you go in Scotland? Where all did you go?
So we did mostly the Highlands, I would Inverness, and that kind of area. I think we flew into Inverness and did a lot of trekking out there, did a lot of hiking and stuff, and then go down by Loch Ness, and then I think we flew out of Glasgow, but I was there very briefly, so mostly the Western Highlands. But I want to go back and do like Isle of Skye and a bunch. I want to go to Edinburgh and like a lot of the other areas I haven't been to yet, but I really want to go and see.
I can tell you, I was over there in 80, shit, I don't know, 83 or 84. That's how long it's been. It's been 44. Has it been, what is that? I don't know, let's see, 83, what is that?
Like
29
almost
years.
40 years,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's been a
Yeah.
long time. Shit, it's been forever. But anyway, I went over there. I wrecked a car and it crushed my hand. I wrecked it
Oh.
trying to go to spring break. Um, this was the last semester before I got kicked out of school. Me and a fraternity brothers was trying to get to Padre Island for spring break, and we imbibed too much and rolled my 280Z, flipped and rolled it, and I ended up crushing his hand. And luckily, neither one of us died, but in fact, the guy that was with me is still alive today. But we were extremely lucky. But anyway, that it was good to be at Heinz back in those days, and that car was a high school graduation present. But I sold it and bought a cheaper used car. I mean, when I got the insurance proceeds, and I went to England and Scotland and hitchhiked around for a few months, and I was over there with another guy with me, and I'm telling you the story because we immediately hitchhiked up to Scotland, and we got up to Inverness, and we got into a disagreement, and he left Inverness on his own, and so I was there at a bed and breakfast in Inverness by myself. I'm what 20 years old, I guess, 19 or 20, and I walked out, started hitchhiking, and hitchhiked down to the Loch Ness, and and did that deal. They look for whatever Nessie or whatever her name is, and then a guy picked me up. I was hitchhiking, and I didn't even know which way to go. I was all by myself, and I didn't know which way I wanted to go. Anything. I was hitchhiking, and some dude picked me up. He said, "Where you going?" I said, "Shit, I don't know. Where are you going?" He was going to Edinburgh to get some wax. His girlfriend was a candle maker, and
Mm.
they lived out on this little village on I guess that's the west side of Scotland. They were looking at the Isle of Skye.
Mm.
When you were looking across the water at the Isle of Skye, and but he was going to Edinburgh to pick up this wax and stay with some friends he hadn't seen in a while. So he invited me to go with him. So I went and spent the night at their friend's house, and they were big Scotch drinkers, and I loved Scotch at the time. And so we were drinking all these different Scotches, and then he invited me back to his home, him and his girlfriend, and I stayed there a little while. I helped them demolish. They were doing some remodeling, and I helped them. It was in the fall, and I helped them gather firewood for their big Guy Fawkes bonfire, and
Oh,
so
that's
that
fun.
they have every year. So I
Yep.
helped them build the big Guy Fawkes bonfire, and then parted ways, and went back to Edinburgh and bought some Scotch. He took me to the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, which was a group he was part of, and where they get the best scotches, the barrels from each of the distilleries, and bottle it on their own. I don't know if it's still there, but it was such a neat experience, and Edinburgh was cool. And I don't know. I just I was supposed to go all over Europe and everything, but I stayed in Scotland for the I went down and seen Glencoe and where
Mhm.
they damn near knocked out the McDonald's, and tried to wipe out the McDonald's and the Campbells. They say never trust a Campbell. The
Mhm.
Campbells tried to wipe out the McDonald's, but the whole time I was in Scotland, everybody would say that I got to go to Ireland. They said it's just like Scotland but more beautiful. But I never did go to Ireland. So, but yeah, man, I've got such good memories of that place.
Mhm.
I've got to go back.
I did Ireland too. I think Ireland was absolutely beautiful, but I didn't have that feeling I did when I was out in like I we did wilderness hikes in Ireland too, but like man, there was just something about Scotland. Like yeah, I'll
Yeah.
absolutely go back again. I didn't do nearly enough, and I think next time because we only had a few days because I had done the UK so I had done England as well. Um, so I definitely want to go back and do like an intentional trip that's like almost entirely Scotland and really get to see a lot more of it.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And the people, man, people are just nice.
Hmm.
Hard to some of them are hard to understand, but they're nice.
Well, I think because of the way I looked, they assumed I was like local, and they
Yeah.
would start talking at me, and I was like, "Sorry, we gotta."
Slow it down. Slow it down.
Yeah. Yep.
But when I was there, everywhere we went, they said don't go to Glasgow. They said it's
Mm.
dangerous in Glasgow,
Mhm.
and my buddy that left me, he went to Glasgow, and I think he ended up getting mugged in Glasgow or
Oh.
something. I don't know, but he didn't heed the warnings.
Oh.
But I understand that Glasgow's not like it used to be. That I asked someone else this before, and they said, no, it's not like that anymore. Was it Glasgow okay when you were there?
Yeah, we were there really briefly because we had driven down from the Highlands and we flew out of Glasgow, so we were only there for like a few hours. But yeah, safety wise, like I don't think it's anything like what it used to be. Like we were talking to a guy there, and he just said like it's like rejuvenated a lot of the area over several decades, and they've really done a
Yeah.
lot of work to make sure it's a lot safer now. So I don't think it's quite like the 80s Glasgow that used to, where people, yeah, like you said, people get mugged and stuff, and it just wasn't a really unsafe place. And so it's changed a lot over the years.
Well, I'm gonna have to go back, and I'm gonna have to go over there again. I may have to take up drinking again. I don't drink either now. But if you're over there, you got to drink scotch. Shit.
I tried while I was there. It is like I was still drinking at the time, and it is scotch, whiskey, the whole it is not. I was not my biggest fan. Like I tried them all because they would be like, no, but you tried. I'm good. I'm good.
It's definitely an acquired taste. I'll tell you a funny story about
Mhm.
that. Down at the deer lease, my son was a little bitty shit, and he asked if he could have a taste of my scotch, and I gave it to him, of course, and then somebody asked him, "Well, did you like it?" Somebody there, and he said, "Not yet." So he already knew he was going to acquire a taste for it, and he has. So,
That's funny. I
yeah.
I could tell you definitely that was not I was when I did drink I liked a tequila. I was always a tequila girl, but like
Ooh.
which is very different. It's a lot lighter, in
Yeah.
the sense of like taste. So I think it's like the like that intensity of the scotch and whiskeys. I was because they would always like, oh, try a different one, and I was like,
Hmm.
I've tried a lot of them. It's not
Yeah.
working.
I definitely went through a tequila phase too. I thought I could drink more than anybody, but it turns out that you know you need to. Charlie Dix can drink more than anybody. Yeah, I found the guy that could drink more than anybody. So, but yeah, tequila. It, it, funny things happen when you drink tequila. I don't know. It's it's a little different drunk.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think I feel like that's the one everyone ends up with stories.
Yeah, it makes your clothes fall off and things.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you mind if we take a break? Now, I am going to pick your brain about one thing I really wanted to, I was most excited about talking to you about
Mhm.
skin surgery.
Absolutely.
And so I want to really pick your brain because of your openness and the journey you've been through on the skin surgery. So, do you mind if I go to the restroom so I can really
Hmm.
pick your brain about this?
Of course.
All right, let's take a break and then I'll come back and we won't go much longer, I promise.
No worries.
All right, I'll be right back.
Okay.
I meant to tell you before I got off on my tangent about Celtic, Celtic and Scotland and Ireland, that I love Earn Your Worth and I love the story and the symbolism. So good job on
Thank
the
you.
shirt. I give you an A plus on the shirt.
Thank you.
Do
Yeah.
you, all your other shirts have that type of pedigree or etymology or whatever the right
Well,
word is?
it's funny because someone was like, "Are you gonna make another shirt?" And I'm like, "I really worked so hard and so intentionally on like this shirt that I was like,
Yeah,
because they're like, I love this one. You should make more." I'm like, I don't know if it could be to this level every
yeah.
time because I was like so much intentionality in it that I'm like, I don't know if I could do another one.
Are you still selling them?
Yeah, yeah. Justin Dobbins' mother-in-law's company, Mustard Seed Graphics, sells them. So they're just kind of rolling on the website that they're still selling them. But people have been super awesome in like, supporting and there's they a bunch of them just got their last order, so it's just exciting to see people wear the shirt. Like I just put it out of like, hey, if anyone wants it, but I was really surprised that people like wanted it, so that was really cool.
No, it's a cool shirt, cool ideal, cool symbolism, the whole
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards. I'm impressed. Uh, in fact, I want to get one for my wife, either a small or a medium, either one. How much are they?
I think it's 20 something for the tank, or I can't remember what the T is. They're Bella and Canvas though, which is my like I was real specific. I was like I want the Bella and Canvas brand shirt because some of the shirts that are made, they do like the Gildan or the Hanes, and they don't last as long.
Mm,
So I really appreciated that. But I have it set to like whatever the lowest is because it wasn't like really about the profit. I wanted just the people to be able to have the shirts, which was cool. Um, but yeah, there's like I think there's tanks, tees, and sweatshirts. But I think the tanks are like 20 something. And then the tees are
how,
might be a little bit more.
how does it work? I never have sold merch. I've always wanted to sell some kind of
Hmm.
merch, like the hashtag Team Vance or something.
Yeah.
I've never done it. How do you set that up? How do you do that?
Well, so just like I said, Justin Dobbins' mother-in-law runs a company, so I go through her website. Like they do they order the shirts and then do the prints and send them out. But most people do use like Teespring or Redbubble. So you create the design and then you just go through one of those two companies and they'll just print them off for you. So you can set like what colors you want to offer, what sizes and like like I said, the brand of shirt because some of the shirts like Gildan or Hanes aren't like they don't have as long they're not as long lasting. So if you want like a higher quality like shirt product, you can select that and it's pretty intuitive.
Okay. All right. Now um, what I really wanted to know about, because I can't tell you how many questions or how many people have asked me, "Are you gonna get the skin surgery?" Or
Hmm.
what is the loose skin like? Or whenever someone learns that I've lost some weight, they immediately ask first about the loose skin, and
Yeah.
so and you're the only person that I know that's been so open and transparent about the whole process. So, for the people that don't know, please give them a little um, synopsis of your journey.
Yeah. So I always, like, yeah, it is one of the first things you think of like, if I lose the weight, I'm gonna have this sagging skin. Like, what am I gonna do about it? And so I knew, I thought about it, but I didn't worry about it as much at the time because when I first started, because to even think about losing that much weight that I would need skin surgery, like, seemed like such a hurdle already. But when I got there, so I had lost a lot of weight, and so I had a very like big, I call them wings. I had very large wings of skin hanging on my arms. Um, my breasts were like at my belly button. Like they were just like gone. They were because they I gone from a double D cup to about a B cup, and so it was very they were very like flat. And then my stomach, which being a woman, that's where you hold the most weight. I had basically an apron of skin that was very uncomfortable. And then on my thighs. I hold the most, which is just, and so like I'd go, for example, perfect example is I go into down dog, right? And so then I'm staring at like flaps of skin everywhere and everything's just hanging. Like my stomach felt like I had udders and I hated it because I was really uncomfortable. Like visually, like it didn't really bother me, but it was becoming a serious discomfort because I was having to wear like compression gear like that was keeping all of the skin in place so things weren't moving around. And it was just very cumbersome. And so when I won the Positively Unstoppable challenge, I won $10,000, and so I was that, and I had been saving a long time for the surgery, and so that helped, put into the surgery fund. And so I went for a consult. I did a lot of research, and I really recommend people really like read through different surgeons, meet with people that you feel comfortable with. I got really lucky that the guy that I found, like he just listens. He talks. He doesn't talk down to you. Just talked really like really transparent, and he could, I think realized very quickly like I'm that person that does a lot of research. I knew what I was going in asking about, so he didn't sugarcoat anything, which I really appreciate because I wanted to go in eyes wide open. And so I said to I wanted my arms taken care of, my chest reconstruct, like I want my chest put back up, and then my stomach and my thighs. But you can't have them done all at once because they're conflicting surgeries, like in sense of pulling on the stitches and stuff. So he said what I can do is that I can do in the first surgery, I can do your arms, your chest, and your stomach. And so that's what I had done in July of 2021. So I had the arms removed. So as you can see, I have a scar that goes all the way down to my armpit. So it's a triangle cut. So they basically cut here, and they cut this triangle of skin off, and then they stitch it together. So I have that on both arms. And then with my chest, it very similar to that, but they do it under your like right here. They'll do the cut, and they basically pull it together and stitch you again. So that's what happened to my chest. So it basically pulls everything up. And then, but my abdominal, which was the most intense, is I had an abdominal reconstruction and a tummy tuck, which is not what everybody has. But basically, what they do is they cut apart and restitch all of your abdominal muscles together to create the abdominal wall again. Because when you gain weight or you have a baby, which I've never had, but I had gained weight, you push the abdominal muscles sit next to each other like this, and they're very tight against each other. But when you gain weight, the fat expands your organs and pushes things out, and so the wall becomes very weak, and it cannot go back together. So you lose all the weight, and you can strengthen the muscles and they get really tight again, but they can't come back together. And so what that did was they restitched them all together. And then tummy tuck is what people are most familiar with, is cutting off the apron and tucking the skin under and creating the stitch line. um, and so I had all of that done at once. And so, I mean, the first thing people always ask me of like how bad it was. Honestly, like the arms and the chest really aren't that bad. What was incredibly bad, like bad in sense of intensity in the first few days, is the abdominal reconstruction because they're stitching your muscles together. You like literally a sneeze, a cough. I couldn't do that for a few days. Those were scary. Like movement and stuff's really limited. You wear compression gear, so I was in full compression gear. I had these compression sleeves, a big chest binder, and a big abdominal binder. And so I was on bed rest for like full bed rest for like at least 3 weeks, I think. Like I got up and moved around. Like literally within the first few days, they want you to do walking, but like that walking in the sense of like I walked down the hall and made it back to the bed. Like you would start really slow. But I was out of work. You're usually out of work 6 to 8 weeks with that. The chest and the arms, if you had them by yourself, it's a lot faster of a recovery and you can get back to work sooner. But because the abdominal reconstruction is so severe, I took the summer to do this, and I thankfully had enough time saved up that I could do that. But obviously, it's a huge impact. And the other thing they always ask about, I would say most commonly, is the cost of it. To be very transparent, I paid this out of pocket. There's no insurance for this, and so for all three surgeries together, you know, nose to snout is $17,000, which I know is a lot of money. It took a lot of time saving that, but that also included the touch-up surgery too. So which again I didn't know about. It was like, so I noticed that there was a little bit on this side where it was still sagging a little. So it was a really small in-house procedure where he just like tucked it a little bit more, tucked it a little bit here, like very minor things, but that's included as well. Um, and so it took a long time to recover. It took 6 months to recover from the initial surgery, which the 6 months was in December. And then I had the touch ups in February. And so now I'm kind of sitting at a space where like I'm fully recovered from that. Um, but obviously it's a huge, huge decision. And I think that's why I've been so transparent about it. And I'm really happy to answer any questions when people message me, because when like I said, I was a person about doing the research, and they'll talk to you medically about like what happens, but nobody actually tells you about the journey of the experience of getting this done. I would go on and look for, I'd see people would get the surgery and they'd post about that, and I wouldn't see them until like 6 or 8 weeks later. And you're in a lot of better shape 6 or 8 weeks later. And I wanted people to be able to see what it looks like a day after surgery, a week after surgery. And so posted more of my body on the internet than I ever thought I would. I was very unsure about posting that, but I really, for me, the reason I did that was because I didn't want that to continue that cycle of like nobody being able to see what actually happens. So I posted the bruising, I posted the scarring, I posted all of that because I wanted people to have even just one person, one resource to see one person's journey and what actually happens when you have the skin removal surgery. So right now, like I said, I do have the scars, and I do a lot of, particularly I would say women ask me like about getting the scars covered by like tattoos or getting them reduced or something. For me, that's never been a concern because it shows, for me, it's like it shows a mark of like the journey that I've made and the successes that I have. So I'm never really worried about the scarring. Um, Also because they're literally behind. I can't see them. I can
Mhm.
feel them for sure. Like they're definitely still going down. They take a long time to go down, but it's never bothered me. Um, and then I still have my thighs to do. My thighs are actually the largest amount of skin removal. I had total 5 pounds of skin removed between all three surgeries that I had the first time. My thighs on their own, like that will be the largest. But I'm again saving up for that, so I will have it eventually, but it will put me out of commission again because the way they do that one is they make a cut, like if this is my leg, from your knee, like if they cut from the inner part of your knee all the way up to your groin, and then into your like where your groin is like this, that's the cut. They make a Y cut, and so again, you'll be on bed rest, so I'll have that eventually. But right now I'm doing great. Had to work back up from all the workouts and stuff, but it's kind of the overview of all of my surgery.
See, I thought you'd had the legs ones done too. I didn't
Nope,
realize you still had more to go.
I do. Yeah, they can't do them at the same time because the way the tummy tuck line with the abdominal and works is that like here, I'll just easier if I stand up.
Mhm.
So right this is where the cut line is,
Yeah.
and for the thigh surgery they would cut right here, and so they would just pull, and so it'd be really unsafe. So the doc won't do it. um, because I would have to be bent over like this for like months because you can't pull on them. So it was just safer to do them separately.
How much um, so the 17,000?
Yep.
That's everything. That's the anesthesiologist,
hmm
the
The whole kit
surgical
and
center,
caboodle.
hospital, the
Yep.
therapy, everything.
I joke because I said the doc was the cheapest part of that. Like when you look at the bill, the hospital booking is what costs us so much because our healthcare system's like kaflooey. But yeah, you
Mhm.
have to book a hospital room, you book an anesthesiologist, and you book a doctor, and so all of that gets paid into that. And all of my like follow-ups, all of like the compression gear stuff, all even the follow-up surgery, like all of that's included within that 17,000. So I don't pay anything
So,
additional after that.
So that's like a turnkey deal. The 17,000. So for
Yeah.
somebody, that gives you an idea of what it would cost for all three.
Yeah. Yeah, the thigh surgery will be another, I think, 5 grand, somewhere around 5 grand.
I was going to ask that. So
Yep.
the for the whole thing again, 5 grand.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
it's
now,
it's not as much because it's only one part, whereas the other one was 3 surgeries in one.
all right. So tell me your thought processes from the time that you started losing weight to the time that you said, "I'm going to get the skin surgery."
Yeah, so I again, like I was always a little like it's always in the back of your mind that you might have extra skin. And so it was one of those things where I was like, I'll kind of wait and see where I end up. Um, I've seen other people get the skin removal and other people be like, I'm proud of my skin and I'll just leave it and whatever. And so for me, it was the decision was more it was a discomfort in the quality of my life. And so really as I started to get like it started to get loose, but then it got looser and looser, and then finally like I think that one of my posts right before the surgery, you could see it. I could cradle my stomach. Like I had that
Mm-hmm.
apron and I could pick it up and put it over my arm. And so I was just so uncomfortable, and not in a way of like showing my body. I was uncomfortable like living my life, and so it became to the point where I was like the quality of my life, and considering that that's going to continue. And that happens with my thighs still. Like we do like a shoulder stand, and then we go into plow, and then I always joke because I can go over into plow, but then I'm like my thighs are right here in my face because all that skin's hanging and it's in the way, right? It's like I'm still getting slowed down in some ways and it's just uncomfortable. So I really wanted to find a way, to be more accessible to myself, which is why I wanted to get it removed.
I don't know the plow. What I don't know what the plow is. The
That's
shoulder
you
stand
lay on
is.
your it's the lay on your back and you put your legs like over. That's what plow is.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, I'd never heard it
Yeah.
called that. All right,
Yeah.
and then so the the moment that you decided to do it, was it um I mean the finances. At some point, you've got to make the decision. How am I going to pay for this sucker? If I
Yeah.
first to me, I would think first decision would be, do I want it, and or do I have to have it? And then the second
Mhm.
point is, how am I going to pay for it? And how did you work through those mental processes?
Yeah, so I think it was really helpful to meet with the doctor because that's people can, so people, a lot of people don't know, is you can go for free for a consultation to these surgeons. So you can go with them and have a conversation. And like I said, my guy was really transparent about what the surgeries would look like, what it would cost. Like they give you an estimate afterward. Like they send you all the paperwork of like here's the breakdown, and that was super helpful. So that so even if I couldn't afford it at that moment, I had a goal to work towards. With it. And so I think the decision was like, okay, I had lost this weight and I'm trying to determine like what's next. And I knew I wanted to continue to do more, but I also knew that if I wanted to continue to do more, that I'd like to do it in as much as possible. And I think getting rid of the skin was allowing that, was allowing more movement, was allowing more access. And so with the cost, like I said, I got very fortunate of winning the challenge, so that money was a huge part of that. Like that really helped me contribute to that. And so my partner at the time and I were able to kind of like pool all the funds and make this happen. But I'm also very cognizant that not everybody has that flexibility. I don't have any kids. I do have my student loans, but aside from that, like I don't have a lot of other costs in my life, so I was able to like really intentionally try to save for that, um, and make that happen. Which is what doing the same thing again now is like I have a fund that I'm like I put money aside every paycheck for the thighs so that when it's time I have it ready to go.
Now, what surprised you the most? I mean, I know you had probably had expectations, and the doctors and everyone probably made told you what to expect. But what was the biggest surprise out of the process that you that shocked you, or maybe not shocked you, but at least said, that's I wasn't expecting that.
I think so. I knew that there was going to be a mental hurdle of like being on, like going from the day, I think it was the day or two before the surgery, I ran a half marathon, right?
Damn.
I went from running a half marathon to being in a bed and afraid to cough or sneeze and being so immobile I had to be physically assisted by my mom or partner to like to get up to go to the bathroom, and then they had to assist me in the bathroom. So to go from this absolute warrior of like where I have fought to on this pinnacle of this mountain to what feels like jumping off a cliff, you know, and I had prepared myself in some ways of like I kind of built out what I called the recovery room. We had like a guest bedroom, and so set up the space that was very like I had like a rolling desk, and I had a bunch of like I learned to cross stitch and like all this sort of like keep busy type of little activity stuff, and that was great. But I also didn't realize how reliant I had become on, like I said, my community of doing workouts with my friends. And like the morning of the surgery, I checked it. I was in the hospital, like prepped to go, and I still went onto the Zoom to say, not goodbye, but to say hi to everybody before the surgery because that's what I was doing every morning at 6 a.m. Like, and so to just drop out of the bottom and not have that is huge. Like, and again, I still prepared for that, but you can't fully prepare for it. How much when you have such a lifestyle change that's for your life, for like it's so ingrained in you, and then I can't work out at all. Hell, I can't walk down the hall by myself. I am very stubborn, and so very determined. So I
That's
think
Irish
getting
and
the
Scottish in you.
little bit, and so getting that, like I was like I immediately with the doctor was like, okay, so what can I do, what can I not do? Absolutely, I followed all of his stuff. Like I didn't do anything ahead of time, but the minute he said you can go for a walk or you can do this form of yoga, like really light stuff, or but as soon as he said I could do it, I was absolutely doing it again because that's the hardest part is like you're sitting there, you're by yourself, you can't move, and it was funny because that girl at 299 pounds wouldn't have had such an issue with it because she was sitting all the time watching movies and
Mm-hmm.
eating food. She wouldn't have been worried about it, right? But now it's freaking me out because I feel like I'm going to gain weight, right? Like I feel like I was really scared about what I was going to eat. I was scared about my activity levels because I'm like, I'm getting this surgery because I've lost all this weight and I have excess skin. Then it terrified me that I could potentially, gain something back, which I mean, if obviously from a more logical standpoint, obviously like I've come this far and I'm not going to mess that up, but it's a fear. And so I don't think you realize how bad that fear is or how bad that mental game could be until you're sitting in it, confronted with it. And so thankfully, like again, I had a wonderful support system and people checking, and I was able to start moving, and but even now, I had that in July of last year, and now we're sitting in April, so we're like only a few months short of a year, and it's and just now I am getting back to fully running, and fully doing all of my, now I'm doing bodybuilding and weightlifting and all these things that I've been wanting to do, but it's taken so long to get back to it, and you have to be really patient, which is not a strong suit of mine, that again, but like that's the impatience and the stubbornness, it could, but you can use that in a good way. Like that kept me going, that kept me wanting that and using the fear to use it as a fuel to get myself out of the bed and do what I could to take care of myself and, move forward.
Um, is this, I don't know anything about the process, but is there therapy you go through after the surgeries, or do you just slowly start redoing your activities of daily living?
Hmm. Some doctors offer it, some of them don't. It just depends on who you go to as to what they suggest. I think my doc knew because of all of the stuff I already did. Like I didn't really need to be recommended a lot because he knew I had such a strong support system, and particularly I was so active. Because I joke because I went to the where his office is in like that old rich like white lady part of Connecticut, like where they go to country clubs and whatever, which is not who I am. So I throw him off every time. Like I got dark humor and I'm coming in and like I'm really fitness and I'm active, and I think he's
Yeah.
just used to like doing like old ladies doing Botox kind of thing, and then
Hmm.
here's me and I'm coming from a completely different path. So I think it was like he was never really as worried about it because he could tell like I was gonna one listen to what he was saying because he said like there'd be people all the time that like they get done with the surgeries and not listen to recommendations. For example, the compression gear has to stay on for weeks, which by the way is incredibly hard and makes your skin crawl. But it's really important to keep the compression gear on to keep everything healing. But he would have people that would just take it off, a few weeks out, and then they would wonder why their results aren't as good. It's that kind of stuff. So I think it was just really important about listening. And yeah, I think that it was just really making sure you're taking care of yourself as optimally as possible.
Mentally, are you glad you did it, or do you have reservations about going through it again?
I'm absolutely glad that I did it. It scares me to do it again. Only because I wouldn't maybe not scared, frustrates me, exhausts me. I don't know. Just because I know that like I know I can do it again, and I know I can
Hmm.
go back to this point because I've done it. Now have had to do it twice, because I know I can. It's not restarting all the way from the bottom. It feels like it, because you're again getting really restricted. But my goal now, though, is to be even more strong than I was when I started the last surgery, right? So that's why I've added in like, I do the Jack program, I do bodybuilding, weightlifting, because I want to build a lot more muscle, so that I have more strength in myself. Like I was already decently like toned, I would say, before, but I really want to have a lot more built, and I want to run again so that I have. Because the more peak fitness you are before you start the surgery, the less you'll lose long term. So, but yeah, wrapping my brain around that it's gonna be tough no matter what. Because with the thigh surgery, like I will have from waist up, I'll have the range of motion I didn't have before, but like I won't be able to walk for a while. And it's going to take a long time because that's a really, very, the particularly when you have the groin cut, you have to be really careful about range of motion and stuff. And it's really going to have to be something I want and mentally am prepared for because yeah, I can be as physically ready, but if you're not mentally ready to go through that again, it might not be, time for it. So I really want to make sure I'm completely ready to do that all over again.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm telling you that if I ask you anything you don't want to answer, don't answer. If
Yeah.
I'm not here trying to get you, and I tell everybody if tomorrow, the day after, or whenever you have a regret or a concern, just let me know. I'll cut it out. I mean, I'm not here to cause you any discomfort. This is
Yeah,
supposed
of
to be a
course.
fun experience, and I enjoy it. I enjoy learning the people's journeys and things. So, but it just dawned on me when you were talking about what the restrictions you're going to have after the leg surgery. That I it seems like to me on your first one when they did that abdominal wall and did
Hmm.
the tummy tuck and all that. I mean, it seems like to me you couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, you couldn't go in there and like press, or it just seems. It seems like to me that you can't, you couldn't. I mean, it seemed like it scared the hell out of you. You went in there if you started pressing down or something, you
Yeah,
know.
no, you couldn't. It was, yeah, no, I don't mind talking about it, but like, so like I said, I have because I live in a residence hall, because I live
Yeah.
where I work on campus. There's the handicap bars in the bathroom, which honestly, I don't like. Shout out to anybody who could do it in their normal home, but because I
Yeah.
had the bars, I could use obviously because there's bars on both sides, so I could use it as support to like lower myself onto the toilet. And the toilet was also raised because again it's a handicap, so it's higher up, so I didn't have to sit down as far, so it wasn't as much of a strain. But yeah, no, honestly, I was so scared about going to the bathroom for the first time because you can't press. You have to like just let things happen. And so it's very that I mean that goes right back to being careful about what you eat and stuff because that's gonna
Hmm.
digest and it's gonna come out a certain way. Yeah, it's all that kind of stuff where you really have to be so intentional and so thought out, about something that you'll never have had to think about before. But thankfully the really intense, like having to be careful about pressing and stuff, like, and going to the bathroom, that's only for the first few days. I would say week and a half is when it's at its most intense, and after that, like, absolutely you still have to be careful, it's very tender, but the really intense levels are only for the first, like I said, week and a half, and then it does lessen a lot, which is good.
Well, I mean, I want to commend you for being so brave and putting out there. I mean, I mean, I've studied the pictures. You put pictures out there with lines drawn on where they're going to cut. I mean, just you have been totally transparent through this process, and it's helped me tremendously thinking about whether I want to do it, or not. And I know it's helped a lot of people out there, and I know that I'm sure a lot of people reach out to you about it, and I just want to say thank you for doing that. I know you've helped a lot of people doing that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the thing is, like I said, I just didn't want it to be another time where someone's going to try to search for this and then not have any answers. So I'm only one person's journey, but I'm hoping it's helpful to anybody to get literally any answers while they're considering it.
Do you have a target date for the legs?
Well, like I said, I'm interviewing for jobs right now, so it also is going to affect it because if I have to move somewhere else, I'd really like to continue with the surgeon I already had because he's familiar, obviously, with my case history, which
Mm-hmm.
means I would have to figure out a lot of logistics about, obviously with a new job, you got to save up time off and all that kind of stuff, but then also it's a lot of time in bed and out of work. So, um, I ideally, if I were to get a new job, I'd save up the time off and stuff. And then, because I work in higher ed, it's, summer's the best time. So it wouldn't be till at least next summer, if not the one after that. But I'm okay with that right now. The work, my job is currently a priority of getting a new job. And so I could do it right now. Like, I could do it this summer if I wanted. But, we're kind of waiting to see what happens with work and stuff and then playing it by ear from that.
When I posted my first weigh in at 475 in my underwear, Mary thought I was going to get fired for doing that. Has your transparency been an issue with your work environment, or any of that?
Thankfully, no. I was worried about that initially. Like, I think I very
Mm-hmm.
gradually, like, slowly shared over time. Like, again, I never thought
Mm-hmm.
I'd post as much as I have. Um, and so it was always something on my mind, but that's why in a lot of them I put, like, particularly the ones where I'm, not wearing clothes and I've blurred things out or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that I put a disclaimer that explains, like, this is truly for medical purposes so that people can understand the process of what I'm talking about. Because
Yeah.
often, you take your clothes off and people turn it or sexualize it into and that's problematic on their end, not mine. But,
Mm-hmm.
I worry about that in terms of employment and stuff. But thankfully, like, my supervisor and course, they've been incredibly supportive. My students, even some of them have found my account and they're always, like, cheering me on and been super wonderful about, all of my journey. Some of them, ask questions about different things. I'm always happy to answer. And I think that for me, my hope is that, like, anybody employer wise that would see that would understand what I am trying to achieve there. And, that I'm trying to show people a lifestyle change that's been made, and here's my journey. And I'm hoping that if anybody sees this, it's for the purpose of helping others to see, like, one, it's my own accountability because that's always what that's for, but also to see a journey of a person that's, you have successes and you have failures, and putting it all out there shows other people that, they're not alone, that there's other people that get skin surgery, there's other people that have eating disorders, there's other people that have autoimmune disorders, like, that they are not alone in this. And so that really is the purpose of, having these posted. And so my Instagram is public, so people can always see those posts. But, like, for example, my Facebook is private, and I don't add most people, to like as a friend on there, rather I just, message everybody in the Facebook groups so that I have those boundaries. So for employment wise, like they can still see the Instagram, but maybe they don't see my Facebook stuff. And so, just varying that a little bit. But again, like I've been very lucky that people have been so incredibly supportive.
What about trolls? Do you get very many trolls or comments and things like that?
I would say the most that I do get some creeps, some lecherous gentlemen, to put it nicely. I
I
wouldn't
think
call them
that's I
gentlemen
think that's a
personally.
man. What do they call that? A euphemism?
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, like I will say, like overall super positive, super supportive people, but the underbelly there, as there always is, some guys making some really inappropriate, pretty disgusting things like in comments or direct messaging things. And I think that's also another part of the disclaimer for me in putting those on posts now, because I used to not put them, and I've noticed that some of the noise has reduced when I do put those on there, because I think a lot of them have learned very quickly that like I don't have time for that and like I will not tolerate it. But yeah, some of them it's just they see a woman who is exposing her body, therefore they feel the, urge to comment on it or, reach out about whatever. And so unfortunately that has been some of the experience, which it's like one of those like people like, oh, that comes with the territory, but at the same time like that's not okay. Like I'm
yeah.
a person, it's, and so thankfully I'm very confident and solid in who I am, because there's other women that happens to who aren't. And God, I've heard so many stories of how that's affected them, how they feel so much worse, or it affects their health and well-being because, they get these comments from, that are unsolicited. And so thankfully, like, I just give them the business and block them, or report them. But, unfortunately, that's not always the case for other women. So it's just something that it does happen, but doesn't make it okay.
What have you found to be the best way to handle those trolls?
Um, Most of them I don't even respond to. If they are finding me through the GDPY yoga group, the moderators are actually have been super amazing in like not having any sort of tolerance for that. So I'll screenshot what they sent me, whether it be a dick pic or some really graphic comments or whatever. Screenshot that. I'll send that to the moderators, and they'll kick the person out of the group, and then I'll block them. Um, I never respond to them. Usually, if it's like a direct message, like I would never indulge bad behavior. If it's something on someone commenting on one of the posts, honestly, usually someone else in the community usually responds to it before I do, in reporting it or just having it out with the person. For me, I don't really have any sort of interest in indulging that, because, you at some point know they shouldn't be doing that. It's inappropriate, and I don't give them any power, because by responding to them, I feel like that gives them the power that they want, and I'm not about that. Because like that's not what I'm here for. This is about a mental, physical transformation and journey, and you're not respecting that.
All right, I'm almost done. I'm gonna ask you some general questions I asked everybody, and then I'm gonna look back through my notes and see what I missed, and we'll be done. But one one general question I asked everybody is, how has social media affected your journey? Because it's been such a big part of my journey. So I ask everybody how social media has affected their journey.
Yeah, I don't think I would have had the journey I had without social media. So like we just talked about like the dark part of it, but I think the light far outweighs that. Like I still post every single day on my Instagram and in the Facebook group, for my own accountability. It has built a network and a support system, that I just don't think I don't think I would have gotten this far. I think I would have done okay, but I don't think I would have hit my goals. I don't think I would have done any of that. And so social media for me has been an incredibly crucial part of this. Um, I think also like noting that I am definitely on the younger end of the spectrum within the group, the DDP Facebook group. Um, I'm more inclined towards social media in some ways. I'm also like, you do TikTok and all the other ones. And so for me, the way I see it is an opportunity to just experience more of the world, and experience other people and other ideas that you would never get to see before, and that is so deeply ingrained in my story. And and will continue to be because I still plan to post indefinitely, and so I really think it just joining those communities in social media has been such a big part of that, and I definitely see that continuing as well.
What does the future hold for Dr. Caitlin K?
It's funny because like yeah, so I just got my doctorate, healing up for my surgeries. I'm at like a lot of points where like I've hit a lot of like I feel like I'm not just turning the page. I shut that volume and I'm starting the next volume in my life in a lot of ways. So
Mhm.
I think it's figuring that out. Um, what I want that volume to be. I think that a part of that is, like I said, hopefully getting a new job, potentially in a completely different location. So getting all of that started. Like I said, I had done a half marathon, so I'm working my way back up to that. But I'd love to get to be in a full marathon eventually, very far down the road. But maintenance is not to be like, I think, underwritten. I think it's so important to like value the maintenance work of, am I mentally well? Am I physically well? Am I, emotionally well? Am I taking care of myself? And, underlying all of that, am I maintaining stuff for my autoimmune? And so my next is, thigh surgery eventually, but in the meantime, just new and bigger goals every time. Like I said, like trying to hit the final weight loss goals, trying to, get to the marathon, all of those things of like, I always want to be setting new goals for myself because that's how I maintain my momentum.
What advice would you give to someone just starting out on their own journey?
I think you need to find out like truly deeply like why you're doing this because I think it's really easy to say like I'm doing this to lose weight or I'm doing this for that. But not only like okay, so you found out like why you want to do this, but like why do you want to keep doing this? You know, that's the part like it's the going forward day in and day out and slogging through it because there's going to be the initial like people cheering you on and the rah rah, but after that ends, like you still are gonna have to keep going for your own self. Like you have to find your own accountability ways. Everybody does that differently, whether it be the post-its on the mirror, a journal, a partner, a family, like whatever that is for you. Like so, find your why, but find why you're going to keep doing it because it is a lifelong journey. And so if you don't find that motivation or find new motivations, you can stagnate and you're not going to hit that success point that you want and keep it.
If someone wanted to follow you or to go back and look at some of these posts that we've talked about, how do they find you, and where do you like people to follow you?
Sure. So you can search my name as long as you spell it correctly, which can be tough for people. But is I'm also under the username Morrigan Ascending. So the word Morrigan and the word Ascending just together. And so I'm on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I don't really post as much there, but like I said, I post every day on the Instagram and on the DDP Yoga Facebook page. So I'm always around on both of those.
You mentioned a website earlier. You said you had a website.
Oh, that was for the t-shirts on the mustard seed graphics. If you want to check out the shirt, they you can go onto mustard seed graphics and then click my page.
And is your page on there just under Caitlin K?
Yep.
Okay. All right, let me look back. Almost done. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Social media aspect, post. But you still posting every day. And just fully worked up through all levels of the app. Running. So, how much are you weightlifting these days?
I'm a what I call a baby weightlifter, so I'm just starting to do like the curl bar and the dumbbells and all of that, so not much. So we have a gym on campus, and actually, next week or the week after, I'm meeting up with some people that are gonna, because I need spotters, because I don't know how to do anything yet, but we're actually going to do a couple different things like deadlifts and jerks and all that to see what I can do because we don't know what my baseline is. So I'm actually going to find out pretty soon. You'll probably see a post about it. I'm excited to kind of find out what my starting is because I have like I'm really strong in my legs. I know if we do leg presses and stuff, like I've got it all day, but my arms are little noodles. So we'll see. We'll see what I can do.
Here's something I wanted to ask you about. You casually said your father is a submariner. Is that so? That means that he is on the submarine crew.
He was, yeah. So he retired a few years ago, but he was in the Navy for 35 years.
And how long was he in a submarine?
Um, 1996 through early 2000, probably like 10, 15 years, I would say, somewhere around there.
How tall is he?
He is 5'9".
5'9". And is he a big guy, little guy? I always assumed that he had to be a small guy to live in the submarine.
Yeah, I mean, he's always pretty fit. I mean, the Navy's got a lot of standards for that you have to maintain so that you could, yeah, so basically that you could fit and be ready to be in a submarine.
So was he like going around in a nuclear submarine where they with the nuclear weapons ready to shoot if the the end of the world comes?
Yeah, I mean, he was the doc on the submarine, so he was always there. He was there to fix anybody up who had gotten any, boo-boos. But, yeah, no, he did that for a lot of years.
That's crazy. Does he have any wild stories about experiences in the submarine?
Some of them, but most of them he cannot talk about.
I've never talked to anybody that spent any time in the submarine. I don't know. I'm claustrophobic. I think to a point. I don't know how comfortable I'd be knowing I'm so many fathoms deep in the ocean. Just if
Hmm.
something mechanical messes up, that we're dead.
Yeah, and they did it like 6 months 3 to 6 months at a time.
That's crazy. So
Hmm.
is there both sexes in there, the men and
No,
women?
that's all. It's all men. I
It's
don't
all
think it's
men.
changed. The ships they'll do both, but right as far
Yeah,
as I know, it's still all men.
all men for 6 months.
Yeah.
That's got to be crazy. You always hear about like metaphors and or analogies. Like a drunken sailor in call. But that's crazy. 6 months in a submarine by with all men.
Oh yeah.
There has to be some mental damage done there somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely something. Yeah.
I mean, only a certain type of person could do that, I would think. I don't
Yeah.
know. All right, let me keep looking. But you're the first one you're my only connection to submariners, so I
Hmm.
didn't. All right, let's see. Yeah, we talked about all that. Was your mom uh, tall? Was your mom tall?
My mom's 5'7", my dad's 5'9", I'm 5'11", and my brother is 6'2". My
Dang.
mom likes to say we grown big.
Well, there has to be some tall genes somewhere in the family.
My parents are actually two of the shortest in our family.
Yeah.
Everyone's pretty tall.
Now you didn't talk much about the hip hop dancing. That did you still hip hop dancing?
Yep. Once a week I go to a dance class, and dance it out. It's a huge stress relief for me, so it's always a really good time. I burn high calorie though, man. It's like easily 1,000 calories a class. It's really great.
Uh, Seriously, starting in a minute 21:03. I think we talked about all that. I think we covered everything. I think that's. The Warrior Women. Oh, what's Melissa's last name? I think I've asked a couple other people. No one really knows how to spell it.
I can. So her name is Melissa Gula-Wisnicki. I can spell it for you if you want.
Okay. Sure.
Um, Gula is Gula, and then her second last name is Wyszynski. Wazinski.
Ynski. Okay, because I don't know the Sheila Sheets or Melissa Gulawinski, and so I'm
Samantha Sheets, yeah.
Samantha Sheets. So
Yep.
these are people that I hope to interview someday.
Mhm.
So I've got to make sure and put them on my list of potential interviewees. Part of the Warrior Women. All right, let's see. We talked about all that. All right, I think that's it. Is there anything that you'd like to say or talk about, or just because I do this as give people a chance to tell their story, and just anything they want to talk about. Is there anything else we hadn't covered that you would like to talk about this journey or anything in your life?
I don't think so. I just, thank you so much for doing this. Like, I really do appreciate like hearing everybody's stories. I love listening to these, and I think
Uh,
it's so many different walks of life. And so being able to hear all of the stories is like so impactful because, like I said before, like you might not connect with one person, but there's that other person that like you're absolutely gonna identify with and maybe learn something or hear about something. So it's been really cool. So thank you for doing this.
Oh man, well, thank you for doing it. I was really looking forward to talking to you, and I learned a lot today. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, of course.
And I'll tell you, you'll be out on. Let's see, today's the 23rd,
Hmm.
so you won't be out on the 25th. You'll be out on May the what is that? The May the 2nd. It's be that Monday week. Monday week. So I got Matt Wilner's coming out
Hmm.
Monday. So his story. So all right, man. Thank you for doing this, and Morgan Ascending. I'm gonna get Mary a T-shirt at some point, and thank you for everything you do and being so transparent. I know you've helped a lot of people on their journey. So keep doing what you're doing, and keep kicking ass. Keep owning life.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, all right. I'm gonna stop recording. Don't hang up. I gotta tell
Okay.
you when to hang up. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna hit stop, but don't hang up. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. I'm your host Vance Hines of Transform with Vance, where transformations begin every day. Please take a moment, if you will, if you like the podcast, to subscribe and follow, and you can find us on social media as well, either under Vance Hines or Transform with Vance. Please tune in and subscribe to our feed. You'll be able to hear lots of transformation stories. I'm in search of interviewing as many transformations as I can find. So if you have a transformation that you would like to have someone interview and have their and appear on the podcast, just send me the name and number, message me, and I'll reach out to them and try to get them here. But no matter what, a better life begins on the mat. Get on the mat and start your transformation today. Thank you.